Hello, Topical, and welcome back to your favorite podcast, your most entertaining podcast, your most enlightening podcast. And you know what? We're going to have a really interesting one today. So, I take a lot of pride in being one of the most composed persons that I can be, whatever that means. And you know what? This guy that I have on today, he really gives me a run for my money in a lot of cases, especially in linear algebra, putting up with Yash, as you've heard, and even Kuba, as you'll hear in the coming weeks. So I'm very excited to have brought on Alex Buchanan onto the podcast. Say hello to the people.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you on. So just to give you all a heads up on how the podcast is going to go, we're probably going to start on a nice long music section. I think we both have a lot to say on that topic, hopefully. After that, we'll probably get into a fun pivot because, that's how I usually do things. Then after that, I don't know, maybe some eating stuff. Why not? Because, it's dinner time. What we usually think about sports, because, I'm a big sports guy. He's probably not. I've said that twice now, so I'm really hoping I'm right, or I just doubled down on the wrong side. And then after that, get into a little philosophy, because, this is called Rationalizing the Monkey Brain after all. So, yeah, I guess we'll get right into things.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, Alex, so I know you're really big into show choir, having done it for a couple of years now. So, I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, I'm going to ask you what your favorite music is to listen to.
My favorite music is to listen to. I've just recently actually started listening to more music. I really didn't have a favorite kind of music, and I kind of just listened to whatever people recommended to me for a really long time. But just within like the past 2 or 3 years, I've started listening to a lot more of my own stuff, which is generally like alternative. There's some jazz thrown in there sometimes, which is still by recommendation mostly, but alternative is probably the biggest thing for me. And then there's some like modern rock.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So, like, what kind of bands do you look at for modern rock?
Modern rock, one that I'm really, I just started listening to about like 2 weeks ago that I really like is CBDB. They're more of like a local Virginia band. They're not super huge yet, but I think they're really good. Anything that just has like a really good, like, if you can tell that the musicality in a band is really good, then I usually like them and I appreciate them regardless of style. But just because this is a style that I especially like, and they also like are very musical, I love them actually.
Okay, I'll certainly have to check that out. And like, what are some of the signs that you can see when like it's the band really knows what it's doing and like they really have a good flow going?
So they usually, I find that it's just great when bands can switch styles, not necessarily genres, because that's not a general thing that people do often. But anyway, they just switch styles and can switch time signatures really well, and they just feel the music. Yeah, they're versatile musicians from what I can tell. I'd love to see them in concert.
Okay, then I can definitely see why you enjoy jazz then, with how much like just you can start a song at one place and to just be somewhere completely different by the end, and like how the
Yeah,
entire thing is just improv most of the time.
yeah, it's really impressive to me. I'm not particularly very well trained in chord structures and how to move through jazz, so it's just kind of a crazy thing to me that I'd love to learn how to do one day.
Yeah, like for me, when like just for some background for you, I played the piano for like I guess 13, 14 years now, and like it's definitely been something that I enjoy a lot more than playing sheet music is playing
Yeah,
improvisationally and just getting on the piano and doing whatever I want, and even if that
yeah,
means playing like the same song that I've been playing for like the past 5 years or whatever, it's still just playing what I want. Like it's not on
yeah,
some sheet, and like it's just what I'm in the mood for, and like there's something about that that really lets you get really into the piece and like you really feel
yeah,
connected and like it emotionally moves you and whatever. But yeah, that's definitely something I enjoy in music as well. So like
yeah.
what do you like about the alternative genre?
I think it fits my emotion. It's like my general emotions this time, like in high school. I'm kind of just it's not super in your face. It's not like super relaxed. There's just a little bit of tension, and it's very moving.
Okay, I can understand that. Do you have any bands that really typify the kind of style you're talking about?
Monsters and Man is one of the biggest ones. They've been their latest album actually came out like 2 years ago. It's called Beneath the Skin, but I've been listening to that on and off just because it really is a masterpiece of theirs. It's night music, I guess, more so than what they had done in the past, but it's just a relaxing form of music.
Ah, yes, I've heard a Monsters and Men song once.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
The ones?
yes, that the Little Talks one was big for me a couple of years ago. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I think that was big for everybody, with that being really
Hmm.
the only real hit they've had. But
Yeah.
yeah, like it seems like they're a good band, and yeah, I haven't checked back on them anytime soon. So
Hmm.
yeah, maybe I'll have to take a look at them. Okay, that's interesting. Like within instruments, like if a band could do one instrument really well and then just like have average performance from all the other ones, what would it be? And that can include vocals.
Um, I think drums kind of work as the backbone for everything. They kind of set how everything else is going to feel, at least rhythmically, of course. You can have poor vocals, and if you have great lyrics, that just kind of makes up for it because that's what you're listening to, along with like the vocals. But if you have like a good beat and you have like a good feel to the song, then the rest of the musicians in the band are usually going to click.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Like for me, I'm a huge fan of frenetic drum beat to a
Oh
song,
yeah.
like where like it's going super quick, like you're really getting a fast pace for it. It gets your heart moving, and like
Mm-hmm.
it just gets you really emotionally invested in the song. Like you're just taken along for the ride, and like in a way that you're just not as much with like a guitar or like strong vocals. And that's an
Yeah.
interesting point that you brought up with the lyrics thing, because recently I've been getting really into listening to more Japanese music, so.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, obviously lyrics are a complete non-factor for me at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So like, do you like lyrics that are like have some deeper meaning to them, or like that just sound nice?
I do enjoy lyrics that have, of course, a deeper meaning. It's always nice to be able to look into a song once you know it a little better, so it kind of just keeps you interested. But I think the main point of, or not the main point of lyrics, a point that a lot of people look past is the percussive element of them. There's something special about speech and just how it sounds. And when you can portray something really cool like that just through lyrics, because a lot of songwriters write their lyrics first. It's just poems. They read it to themselves. They say, "How does this sound to me?" without even putting music to it. And if if you create that for the sole purpose of saying this is supposed to sound like a poet would make it, and it's supposed to portray a sound with the voice, even without vocals, then it just kind of improves the song.
No, I can definitely understand that. There's something really powerful about like a really good rhythm, and like just feeling like, okay, this song is taking me somewhere, because like the lyrics, they both mean something to me, and like they're also just inspiring me to dance or whatever. And like it's an interesting thing that like just a bunch of words can do that, and like humans' ties to music have always been very interesting, like along with just listening to an impassioned speaker, or like just
Yeah,
it's very interesting how connected they are. I wonder if that had just had to do with like war chants or whatever back in our history, but yeah,
yeah.
like it's
There's a lot of rhythm in our lives, whether it's music or not, whether it be just sleeping cycles, whether it's something that long, or I guess all the way down to our heart. There's just little things that people don't think about as much that are so timed, just like music is.
yeah, and even in the biggest things, like a theory that I've talked about a couple times on the podcast is how like as you zoom out further and further into the universe, it just becomes more and more cyclical. If you look at how the galaxies are formed, heck, if
Mm-hmm.
you look at how the universes are likely formed, obviously,
Yeah.
it just like the Big Bang theory is obviously the start for a lot of people, but and in the way I see it, I don't know what the physicists think on this exactly, but the way I see it is just the Big Bang iterates over and over again until it gets to stable constants for the universe. And once like gravity becomes stable enough that particles can actually coalesce, or like the nuclear force gets strong enough that it can actually affect things, then like that's when a universe just appears, and like that just happens over and over and over again. And like if at the most macro scale the universe is cyclical, and at the most micro scale the universe is also cyclical, well, clearly that's a pretty pervasive thing. So that's definitely how I feel on that. But okay, I guess we can get back to music. So
Yeah.
while I'm really into listening to music, I've never been really crazy about dancing. What do you like about the dancing aspect of show choir?
I actually despise dancing.
Oh,
I
okay.
am a terrible dancer naturally.
Huh.
Um, Actually, for my audition for show choir for last year, I did not dance at all during that audition. I somehow got into the group, but what I do with dancing is it doesn't come naturally to me. There's been no instance like in my recent life where I've wanted to break out into dance because of a song. I feel the song. I just don't have like a necessity to dance like other people do. So I guess kind of when I have to dance for show choir, it's more like these are the moves I have to do and this is how I'm supposed to execute them. It's more of like a mathematical thing for me than it is like a feeling thing when it comes to dance because I just don't understand the feeling part of it.
No, I can definitely relate to that. Do you think it's just an extroverted reaction versus an introverted reaction, like for you, where like most people they're extroverted with it, they're like, "Oh, that's a good song. Let me express myself," and then they just like do a tango or something. But like for you,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, it might be, but I think, of course, it's also something past that because there's a lot of people who are introverted and they kind of come out in that, and that's their way to like express themselves. And I'm not sure. I just know that there are a couple people I know who are like that, and I'm like that in the same way.
yeah. Okay, science, get on that. I want an answer there. So okay, have you ever had any experience with instruments, or is that just something that you never really got out of music?
Yeah, I played trumpet, and I've been in band since sixth grade, and
Oh,
I've been playing piano since I guess about the same time, a little earlier, maybe.
okay. Well, yeah, then we're gonna definitely have to talk about our piano experiences, but I guess we'll start on the trumpet one so that we can tease the audience with that a little bit. So, on the trumpet, what key did you really decide to settle on?
What do you mean, what key?
Well, my this might be an incorrect understanding of trumpets, but my assumption was that like you could like choose what key you wanted your trumpet to be in, and you would just have to stay within that scale.
So, trumpet are all like wind instruments. You can have them in different not transpositions. They can be like in a certain key. So, for example, most concert trumpets that aren't with like an orchestra band trumpets are in B flat,
Okay.
and that's what you like. You might think, oh, you can only play in that key, but that's just the transposition. So, like what you would read on like a sheet of music as a C for B flat trumpet is actually a B flat on the score.
Hmm.
But you can play like chromatically, you can play whatever.
Okay. So okay, I'm glad I got that misconception cleared up then. Okay. So, what kind of songs do you like playing on the trumpet then?
Um, I actually don't have a lot of experience playing in different styles, just because I haven't really gone outside of the whole. I haven't looked outside of my high school band experience with it. I've played, of course, a lot of concert music. I've played jazz music. I've played um, pop show music for show bands. Yeah, I think my favorite of that is probably just the like pop show kind of stuff, just because it's there's the necessity to be precise, like there is in concert bands more so, because that's what you focus on in the concert band, and it is also a necessity in jazz band, but it's not. The expression comes first in jazz, is what it has usually. That's my understanding of jazz. Expression comes first, accuracy comes like second, and the opposite is true in my mind for concert band. Like that's the order that I think of them in, and show band is kind of like the perfect mixture of them for me, and that's why I kind of like playing it more.
Okay, that's interesting, and that actually just when you said that, that conjured up and a debate that I see a lot in classical piano right now, just with the new wave of pianists being so obsessed with just getting everything absolutely perfect in terms of accuracy, and a lot of at least older people, but even some younger people feel like something is lost in like the flow of the piece, and, like the
Mm-hmm.
expressionism of it, and just how emotionally invested you can get in it because everything just sounds too perfect almost, and like you lose some of the human element in it.
Yeah, I think people often like don't, maybe they're playing above their ability level. So like the only reason you master technique in anything is so that you can express yourself. But if you're just at that point where you're barely mastering a skill and then you're just playing at that highest level you possibly can, it's really hard to get that extra expression out because you're focusing so hard on making it perfect. And you just have to, if you can make yourself better and make your technique better, then maybe you can play that same piece with more expression because you have to pay less attention to making it as good as you once wanted it to be.
Yeah, that's definitely one way of looking at it. Okay. So, and like I just even like with stuff like cracked notes and like it's not even like, oh wait, I hit the wrong note. Like that's never
Mm-hmm.
really a good thing, but just being like, no, I have to hit it the note perfectly. I can't even like get my like slip off or whatever. And yeah, it almost seems robotic at some points. And like,
Yeah.
and nobody really wants to listen to a robot play the piano. Well, sometimes if like you're listening to a song where like 8 different people would have to be on the piano at once to be playing it, but and those are left to Symphasia and whatnot. So yeah, that's okay. That's that. What led you to the trumpet initially? Sorry, initially.
Um, I think, goodness, it was a long time ago. I wanted to play French horn initially. I know that, but my sixth grade band director decided that she wasn't going to let anyone play French horn
Hmm.
because she didn't want to teach anyone. She didn't want anyone to switch because she was retiring and she had pretty much given up at that point.
Well,
So
right.
I did not have the opportunity to play French horn, so I just kind of stuck with trumpet. And my dad played trumpet, so he was like, "Hey, maybe I'll remember things." And of course, he didn't. It was like 30 years ago. But regardless, I don't know. I just kind of stuck with it. It seemed right. It wasn't like way too big, and I was a small child. I could just carry it to school. I was like, "Hey, I can practice every day. I can bring my instrument home."
Yeah,
So it just kind of fit, and I just stuck with it because I it's like, why change?
yeah, certainly better than being a sousaphonist and having to deal with that problem.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
Yeah. So, how are you with like the technical aspects of playing the trumpet? Like, is stuff like tonguing it or yeah.
I used to be a lot better. I have not given up practicing entirely recently, but I've definitely become more laid back. I'm focusing on vocal performance more now, and I'm hoping to practice that. I'm gonna focus on practicing that like in my future, and I'm kind of looking at dropping playing trumpet after high school. So I've kind of winded down, but that's what I used to focus on was the technical aspects. I wouldn't really look at songs as much as just practice getting technically better and more technically sound on my instrument.
Okay, that's definitely interesting. Within like vocal performance, do you think that like it's more difficult to sing along with a band performing behind you and like it making it harder to stand out from them, or harder to sing in an a cappella group where like you have a bunch of singers around you?
I think they both come with their own challenges. You also, when you're with a band, you just feel like a lot more power behind you, and you feel like you can. I guess you just feel more safe. You kind of go for things a little bit more. But when it's an a cappella group, everything's a little bit more vulnerable, and your tone will stand out more than like when you're alone. It's just when you're alone, like with a band behind you, it's kind of just you and your only tone. So there's nothing for you to be wrong with. But if you're in a group, if your tone sounds different or you're kind of like messing something up, then it's obvious. So there's a
Okay.
little more freedom in singing with a band.
Is there one that you enjoy more? I'm presuming singing in a band, since it seems like that's what you do more often.
Um, I don't think I enjoy either or more. I've enjoyed my experiences with singing in bands more or singing in a band more just because more of my friends have been around. I don't have a lot of close friends in choirs. So I think that might make me biased, but I assume they're actually probably pretty equal for me.
Okay, that's definitely interesting. So, what originally got you involved in show choir?
I was essentially just peer pressured into it.
Figures.
There's not much more to it than that. I have an Instagram account, and I kind of posted, and I still post videos of me singing and like playing piano periodically, and everyone was like, "Hey, you got to audition for show choir. You're such a good singer." I'm like, would have to dance, but they got me to do it anyway, and I didn't dance, and I still got in. But okay,
Okay, that's a pretty funny story actually, and good
yeah.
good for you posting actual constructive content onto your Instagram. I know a lot of people just post like stupid pictures or whatever. Oh, look, this is my food, or I don't know. I'm the wrong person to be talking about this. Obviously, I don't have any social media. I don't really look at it years, so I don't know. But yeah, that certainly sounds like the ideal form right there. Okay, so. I guess you'd be the wrong person to ask here, but I'm going to go for it anyways because I want a discussion on this. So, do you think that dance performance should be considered a sport? Because for a lot of people, when I ask them that, mainly I ask like either cheerleaders or actual dancers, they always want to push for it to be a sport, and I feel fairly strongly that it shouldn't be.
I really think it depends on your definition of sport. They do compete. They definitely compete. They take a lot of time practicing, and it's a very physical thing to do. Most types of dances, you'll see dancers just like panting afterwards, and they have to be in shape most of the time. It's definitely a hard thing, and I feel like to be considered, my definition of the sport is there's a physical attribute, there's a physical like section of it, and then there's a like competition aspect of it. And I think that dance fills both of those criteria.
Okay, and I think that's the more prototypical in definition, to be honest. I think that's the one that I commonly hear hurting chess in that regard. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, my definition of a sport, I had to think about this earlier when I was working up this outline, is like sports. What really determines it for me is just a sport is anything that can have a determined winner intrinsically upon the competition. So by that I mean only with only the I shouldn't use even more complicated terms. I was going to start bringing up legal things like if the two parties are involved and like there isn't an outside party judging it. I'm not going to go there. You can go to law school if you want to hear that all day. But basically, just let's say you have a soccer game or something. I don't know. So you have one team over here, and then you have another team over here, and like let's say one team scores 3 goals and the other team scores 2 goals. At the end of the game, you know who won. Now, if you
Mm-hmm.
have a dance performance or something where, like, okay, let's say you have a show choir performance, so like one team comes up and competes, and then they head off the stage, and then like another team comes up and competes on, and then they exit off the stage. So the who won? Well,
Yeah.
someone else has to determine that. So in that sense, I think it makes stuff like dance, like cheerleading, like I'm trying to think of a slightly physical example where that's the case. I can't really, well,
Mm-hmm.
not physical, that is physical, but yeah, like the intrinsic value to it is it being a performance versus the
Yeah.
others being a competition. And I think that ultimately determines it. It actually makes, under my definition, chess a sport, in that like you can
Mm-hmm.
have a determined winner. It makes video games a sport. So like I think that's interesting because maybe we overvalue the physical aspect. And like
Maybe.
I always don't like to conclude that discussion with performance isn't a denigrating thing. It's just clarifying, and like the fact
Yeah.
that like I just want people to think about it because I personally find it fun to classify things.
Yeah. No, I totally understand the idea of like subjective things not being sports. That's when you kind of get into it is the performance, and there is that whole feeling aspect which we talked about earlier with music. But I think the only thing you can really grade in a performance like that is technical, like the technical ability of someone. So it's really hard to not let your emotions get in the way when they're trying to evoke emotions in performance, and that's what Drum Corps International is a marching band kind of esque thing where they uh, go on a summer long tour and they compete against one another. And I think that's the best example of competitive music that we have. The scores are very well standardized as compared to any other performing art competition. And I think if things can start move to like other performing arts can move to those kind of standard scores based on not subjective matters, like how you feel about something, but how like technically sound a performance is, then it'll definitely be considered by it should be considered by all as a sport if it can reach that.
Yeah, it'll definitely move closer and closer in that direction. And even looking at sport, yeah, performances like gymnastics and like ice skating, where it is all dependent on like the specific type of moves that you do, and like how far outside the circle did you go on your spin, or how did you stick that landing perfectly, or did you wobble a little bit? And like it definitely is moving more and more towards the technical aspect. And that in that regard, it kind of brings up the argument that I was talking about with the pianists nowadays, where like they're super focused on the technical stuff. And I almost wonder what a situation would look like if all of these people were only judged based on how they made
Yeah.
the judge feel. And like you just had enough judges that like, you could eliminate biases. Like something people always talk about in soccer is this one game in the 1960s where like there was like England had like an amazing goal in the World Cup. And then there was, the Russian judge on the other side of the field, and he gave him a handball for no reason. So like just eliminating those biases, and like I think it would make it for a situation where you could judge it based on its emotional value, and ultimately the technical aspects is just to classify the emotional value in more objective terms. So like
Yeah, it could be.
if we could make it that work, I think that'd be really cool to see.
That'd be great. Somehow I don't think it'll happen in our
No,
lifetime though.
no, definitely not. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for. Oh, but yeah, I wanted to go back to that piano thing. So
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I've been playing piano for a while. You've been playing piano for quite some time. So what I'm curious to see is like, what do you enjoy the most while you're playing the piano? Do you like laying down like a sick chord, or like do you like doing scales or like arpeggios, or do you like doing like just really what am I trying to say, like forceful music where like you really get into it and like you put down like a hard one, or like do you like just whisking around the piano? Like what's your style?
I think it really like piano is the instrument rather than vocally and trumpet that I really play as like a reflection of my mood. I'm self-taught. I don't really try to play something for a teacher. I don't. I have goals for myself, but I don't have goals that anyone else has set on me. So if I'm feeling a certain way or I've felt some way for like a week or so, then I'll find a piece that fits that, and it helps me learn it a lot faster, and it helps me enjoy the piece a lot more. And I wouldn't say I have a favorite like style or there's a favorite thing I like to do on the piano. I would say general my more general mood, like my neutral. I guess I like just kind of hammering out like octaves in the left hand while going all up and down the piano in the right hand, and that's what I would consider normal for me. But then when I'm happy, I might just like to play in the upper octaves only, left hand, right hand, and then I might, if I'm sad, I just might play around with some chords and improvise. So I think it's all really dependent on my mood for piano.
Okay, I can definitely relate to that as well. Like it is completely dependent on like what you want to hear at that time and like what you want to express, because music is so
Yeah.
much about expressing yourself. How often do you get the chance to play?
Um, it's kind of just whenever I have free time now, which is really variable. I don't set out blocks of time to practice anymore. I would say there's an actual number, maybe like 3 or 4 hours a week at this point, and only like 1 or 2 hours of that is focused like practicing something.
Okay, I can respect that because yeah, it's very difficult to carve out actual time, and like I am not able to do that unfortunately because as is the case for almost every high schooler in their senior year, your schedule is very overloaded, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean unless you're like one of those seniors that like doesn't have a first block or like they get home at like 2:30 in the afternoon. I gotta imagine that, but yeah, like it's very hard to carve out actual time, and like you just gotta take whatever you can get. And for me, I feel like I've had both experiences with piano. I was classically taught for. I don't actually know if this what that means. I just mean like I had a teacher. I think
Yeah.
that's what classically taught means, but whatever. For like from like age 3.5 or so until let me see, what would that be, like 14? No, not 14. That's not correct. Like 12.5, and then from
Mm-hmm.
that point on, I'm self-taught. And really, the biggest reason for that was just I moved and we never really bothered to find another teacher. But that was something I definitely appreciated because, like, just in the time that I was classically taught, I never really bought into the whole practice thing. Like, I would play
Yeah.
the piano in my free time, but I would just play whatever I wanted. I wasn't going to play some stupid song that the teacher wanted me to play. And it was always super funny because, like, every time, like, at the end of a lesson or whatever, I would get assigned a song and, like, I would play it once and, it'd be okay or whatever. And then, like, the next time I would come in, first thing I would do would be play that song again, and I would play it almost perfectly. And they'd be like, "Wow, you must have been practicing a ton." I'm like, "Nope, second time I've ever seen this."
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah,
that
I think it speaks to the motivation of children a lot.
yeah,
It's when like people also mostly with piano, I guess, parents throw like their children into these classes where I mean they may enjoy music very much, like you and I both do, and you were thrown into these classes at a very young age, and it kind of just it definitely didn't hinder um, your learning, but it kind of directed it in a different way, I think, than maybe you wanted to, if I'm correct.
yeah. I mean, at some level, you have to gain some technical understanding
Yeah.
of what you're doing. Like, I'm sure you can appreciate that. Starting from
Mm-hmm.
essentially nothing, like you have to know how to do a couple chords. You have to know how to play a C major scale. You have to be able
Yeah.
to just know, like, not to use like I don't know your if you're going doing like a scale or something, you don't cross over with your fourth finger or whatever when you're going up. And, like, you don't play with the back of your hand, like just like basic stuff where like you can actually
Mm-hmm.
control what's going on the keyboard or piano or whatever. And yeah, like once you get to past that point, though, I think it should very much just be dependent on what you want to do and like just expressing yourself, as we keep stating. 'Cause that's why we do music.
Yeah.
So like that's something that I've really enjoyed. For me, like my style, I feel like I lean more towards the speed side, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously very difficult to play on the speed side, and if you're not feeling it, you don't want to go for that because you'll just make
Mm-hmm.
yourself feel sad. So like that's me. Do you have specific keys that you like to not keys as in like oh I like the C6 or whatever. Like
Yeah, no,
yeah
I
as
get what you mean.
yeah like do you
Um, I really like the the basic C minor. I have no idea why. I just enjoy it. C minor, E flat, um, G. Those are probably like my three favorite standards, like just minor and major.
okay I can definitely feel that. I'm a big fan of the C minor, the G minor. Those are always really fun. Something I've gotten really into like the past year mainly has been this could sound overly complicated, but the F sharp major actually like or yeah I believe that's the term for like the higher, not higher, the happier sounding
Yeah.
ones. It's like the black keys are always underused by people that aren't playing on their own. Like in classical music, it doesn't use that much of the black keys, unless you get to like the really high levels, like get some
Mm-hmm.
Chopin or whatever. Yeah, Chopin, and it's just an underused thing. Like it's really cool. I experimented with some of those chords, especially coming out of just being taught lessons, because like it's just not something I ever used. And like now,
Yeah.
just getting like a, just like a, yeah. I mean, it's just really cool to see, and also just doing whatever on the piano it can be fun. There's a couple where it's like just okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Like you break out like a E minor, like it's an E minor. What are you going to do? Or like a F major. I mean, there's not much you can really do with those, but it really comes down to just personal preference at that point and just what your brain happens to be feeling.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of just like experimenting around with it and seeing what works, and maybe extending it the next time you want to try it, and just seeing more and more things that work. And that's all improvising is. It's all jazz and just improvise. Like that's what the greatest people do. They understand the basis of music theory, and then they understand what things should work, and then they test their own things. And I guess as you get older and you get more experienced, you understand what more things work. You remember what else works, and it's just more and more fun to experiment and see how far your knowledge and your experience can take you.
Oh, definitely, and like all the time when you're improvising, you'll just like get to a point that you haven't been to in a song that you're working on, and you will just be like, what if I throw this chord in? You'll be like, ooh, that sounded good. I'm gonna roll with that from now on. Or like you'll be like, ooh, that shouldn't sound good at all. Why did I even push those keys? But yeah,
Mhm.
like it's just so much of just trying things out and seeing what you like and just getting it to work for you. So like that's a huge thing in improvising. But something that I tried, I really pushed to do for like a couple months, like a couple years ago, was I tried to get a lot better about writing my songs down, and by writing I mean like putting them in the computer because I'm not writing things down. But
Mhm.
and like just so that I would actually have like a catalog of things. And
Yeah.
in more recent years, I just decided I'm gonna record what I play, and I can just listen to it or whatever.
Yeah.
But what's been your experience with that? And have you really tried to catalog your work at all?
Um, it's been on and off. It's kind of when I feel motivated and I feel this is something I really want to try to delve into deeper later, I might put it on a music software and like print it out just so I can look at it later if I happen to forget it. But I I pride myself on the fact that I memorize music very quickly and I don't forget it very easily. So I don't really have the necessity to write a lot of things down.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way with songs that I'm pretty invested in. Like you don't really forget where you go in a song, like unless
Yeah.
you're going on for like 10 minutes or something. It's not something that you forget. Like you know
Yeah.
what chord you're gonna go to. You know where like the song moves. It's pretty easy to abstract in music because especially I was going to talk about this earlier, but like the trend in mainstream music or like pop music right now where like everything is just formulaic and abstract, but like it's
Mhm.
very easy to and just create patterns even for your own music because you're improvising, which means you're going to be algorithmic and like you're going to have a specific idea of what your brain wants to do, and like it's going to either do it in a different key this time, or like it's going to just with it in a slightly different way, but like it's
Yeah.
ultimately going to be predictable, and it's not necessary ultimately to write things down, but it could be helpful if you want to like give other people a piece.
Mhm.
Have you enjoyed it all performing for other people, whether that be in person or putting your stuff up online?
I enjoy I do enjoy putting the stuff up online just because I can essentially it's deceptive in that I can take like two or three takes and say, oh hey, this one's the best, I just want to put this one up. And that's kind of what I like about that. I don't love performing um, for piano, and I don't love performing with trumpet just because I am not great at like channeling like my expression in front of other people. That's kind of true like with all aspects of what I do, whether it be music or otherwise. But I'm bad at doing that. But it's a lot easier in like show choir when I'm performing dancing and doing like facials and singing. It's just a lot easier to put myself out there with that. So I enjoy performing in that aspect, and I enjoy like putting videos that like I can choose up.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. That's a big thing for me in the podcast actually, is that like I don't like recording with people in person. I've tried it once or twice because like it just feels like it's a different dynamic. I feel like I'm talking to a computer right now, so I feel completely confident in what I'm saying, and like I don't feel like someone's going to judge me when I'm saying it because I'm looking at a computer. I'm not looking at a face. So like
Yeah.
you just feel like you can speak more freely, and just in my experience with performing on the piano, it was never something I enjoyed at all because yeah, like you feel inhibited in some way, like you have to live up to some expectation. You almost feel like you have to add a little trill here to like impress the audience, or
Mm-hmm.
like it takes a certain amount of self-confidence to be able to perform in front of other people and almost just looking for like to get something out of them. And I think there's
Yeah.
a big difference between the kinds of people that really enjoy playing for themselves and just playing on their own and not having anyone listen and whatnot, and playing for someone else, and like you practice at home so that you'll be prepared to play for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely been something that I haven't liked as much in my recent years with piano. Is just the expectation that, oh, you gotta, if you're playing, you gotta like take out the headphones or whatever, and you gotta actually play for your family, and like that's
Mm-hmm.
not something I like. It puts a certain amount of pressure on like your performance, and like you feel
Yeah.
like you're not getting the true value here. You're just getting some subjective one, and Unfortunately, unless like I'm recording it or something, and obviously that's even going to change it. Like you're just not going to
Hmm.
get the actual thing.
Yeah,
And like
I
that,
get that.
yeah, definitely. It seems like most music people do. But that actually brings up an interesting scientific argument that like always really annoys me is that whole thing where like as soon as you analyze something, you lose whatever true value that it had. Like, and that applies to literally anything. Like, obviously, it's really bad if you're like analyzing like an electron or something at the not even microscopic, like at atomic level, but
Hmm.
or atomic, not atomic. I just made up a word there. But
I know what you meant.
even like if you're determining like the capacity of like a calorimeter or something, like you're ultimately affecting the thing and you're dealing with it in confidence intervals. And like that's an uncomfortable thing, the fact that like we can never have 100% certainty and that like you always have to accept at some point like some level of error and I don't know, it's an annoying thing.
I think it is. It also kind of goes into the idea of like focused thinking versus like what is it, diffused thinking or something like that. It's if you can like go back after you're focused in on something and after you're looking at it in like critical thinking lens and like completely dissecting it, it kind of also like makes it more beautiful when you look out and see like, wow, this thing is actually really complicated and I kind of understand it, but I didn't make this, or most of the time you didn't make it, and it's just like an incredible thing. So I kind of disagree, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that I think I see what you're saying. Can you explain that diffused versus focused thinking thing a little more? Because I don't think I've heard of that.
So focus thinking is when you're kind of just like looking at everything piece by piece, and it's a method of critical thinking. Both diffused and focused are methods of critical thinking. But then diffused is kind of big picture, I guess. You're just like looking at everything and you're taking information in as opposed to like trying to put information in. If that makes sense. It's kind of like taking versus giving, I guess.
Okay, so I guess in that situation it would depend on what you're trying to get out of the situation. If you're trying to more efficiently solve the problem versus trying to actually learn from the problem.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I can definitely see different situations where each would have its own value. And I, like whatever, like when you're saying like the whole zooming out thing, all I can think of is just Mrs. Johnson saying, "Here's the forest and here's the trees,"
Oh goodness.
and that was never something I was that crazy about because like yes, it's nice to have the forest, but like you can always get that at the very end. And like I've never been that much of a big picture thinker. I've always just been okay. Let's dive straight into this problem. Let's attack it. Let's push as hard as we can through this problem. Let's look at it from and not look at it from every angle. So that's what you were talking about. But just like
Yeah.
like looking at it like in small senses, taking it, zooming out a little bit, and then like diving straight back in. And like that's
Mm.
kind of how I am as a personally. I just like to when like I'm confronted with a problem, I like to just smash through it because I know that like if I don't deal with the problem immediately, I'm either just not going to deal with it at all because I don't want to reinvest emotionally, or just yeah, like that. I think it just speaks more to my personality versus yours.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up that music discussion. Okay, so something that I like to hear from people is questions that they really wrestle with and like just the kind of questions where like you think about them one time and like it really gets to you and like you think about it for like a little while and like you end up with it unresolved and you just keep coming back to it and like you just can't get past it and like you can't let it go and like the question just keeps lingering like you look at it from different angles you ask different people and like it still is just a problem that you can't resolve in your head. Do you have any of those that like you can think of off the top of your head?
Like personal problems or
No,
more
not personal
philosophical
problems.
problems
I don't
that
want
I
to I don't
like.
want to hear about like family troubles or something. Just like
Well, no,
yeah,
I mean like
yeah, like philosophical stuff.
um, I don't know. I really with philosophical things and political things, I find myself like I never come to a consensus on anything, which is something that I realized that I'm gonna have to learn how to do very shortly, but at the same time, very much a centrist in most aspects of my life. I can go either way on almost everything, so I struggle to um, kind of decide on everything. I've yet to figure out a way to uh, just decide on things. I'm indecisive. Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely interesting, and uh, in a lot of ways, I have the same problem. So we've never talked about this, obviously, but I suffer in a lot of ways from OCD, and like in
Mm-hmm.
the undocumented sense, because like, what am I going to gain from going to a psychiatrist? I realize
Yeah.
that's the wrong thing to say, but trust me, me and my family have had this discussion. It's not something that's worthwhile right now. But yeah, like
Yeah.
it
I
just
understand.
crippling indecisiveness is a terrible thing. Like just when you can't make a decision, like you can't resolve the two sides, that's a tremendous burden, and like it's
Yeah.
something that like I fight hard in my life to not have to deal with. That's why I wear the same clothes every day. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I always try and offload situations and just questions to someone else. And even when like I have to pick from two equal things, I'm like, hey, let's get a random number generator, let's let that make the decision for me. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like it's just indecisiveness is not fun, and like it seems like for them you can offload it pretty well for a while, but obviously that's just for stalling a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of interesting. I suppose it's not really worthwhile getting into mine on predictive value versus past performance, because that is very much like an AP Stats concept. So I'll just push past that, I guess. So what do you do for fun, like in your free time that you barely ever have?
Um, I do like a lot of random things. Um, Mostly because so I have a little brother who's 3 years younger than me. He's actually not littler than me. He's like 5'10". He got the good
Oh
genes, you
wow,
know.
5 times, jeez.
But we're essentially opposites in just about every way.
Hmm.
But he's my best friend, so we'll kind of, I guess, we find things that are in the middle of what both of us like, and sometimes we'll do things I like, and sometimes we'll do things he like. But since we're opposites, it kind of like encompasses the whole spectrum. Video games, it's we'll do like some of those, I guess. Music sometimes, obviously. Runs, I'll run. He works out a lot. He does nutrition stuff, and I've been getting into that more with him. So I'll like look up recipes, and we'll like cook together. We'll bake together. Um, yeah, kind of just like going out. I do a lot of food stuff, I guess.
Okay, that's really cool actually. Just from someone who has two brothers and a sister myself, that's really cool to hear that like you have such a good relationship with him. That's something I personally struggle a lot with my brothers, just because like I'm a very introverted person, and like
Yeah,
even beyond that, I don't have a lot of time for them, and like I don't. And when I am confronted with problems, as I said, I either shell up or just avoid them because I don't want to deal with them. That makes it very difficult to have a relationship with them, and that's something I definitely confront as I'm heading off to college. So that's a very reassuring thing to hear
mm-hmm.
someone in a similar situation to have such a great relationship with their brother. That's really cool. What do
How
you
old
think?
are your siblings?
Yeah, so my one brother, Josh, he's 16 and yeah, I guess a half at this point. And then my other brother's like 15, I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's like he's 15. He's yeah, 15. Yeah, whatever. And then my sister's 11 years old. So oh wait, no, she's gonna turn 11 years old in like 3 weeks or so. So
Mm-hmm.
they're relatively close to me, and like it's been interesting with my relationship with my sister because I think in a lot of ways I've treated her as like this is gonna sound super manipulative, but like as my experiment with having a child myself, because like for me, I don't really want to have children. Like I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the ridiculous investment that you have to make both up front and continually for essentially no payoff. I don't like the like just the purported benefits because I don't think those are things that I value over stuff like my time or like my energy or my home
Yeah.
life. So like that's just me, but it's definitely something I wanted to try out, and like it's she's been a really good learning experience for me, but obviously in the process I've kind of sacrificed in my relationship with my two brothers, and I think that's definitely hurt me in that sense. What really got you close with your brother? Was it just the age gap?
Um, I think so. I don't really know. My best guess is that my parents never really took us out a lot when we were younger. So neither of us really had like a lot of friends until we were like in middle school. And obviously, so like as we've grown up, he's like a popular person, I guess. He's like whatever top group at his school or for whatever. And I don't really talk to a lot of people. I think that's the fact of me being older and me going longer without like talking to a lot of people. But essentially, like, yeah, our parents didn't take us out a lot. So we kind of just were with each other most of the time. And that kind of forced us to, or it would have either forced us together or apart. And it just so happened to force us together.
Okay, that's nice, and that's also something I can relate to actually, because my family, yeah, we constantly joke about this, but like none of us have friends in my family. Like my parents don't have friends outside of like each other. My brothers don't really have friends. My sister's like the only person that has friends. She actually just had a friend over today. I had to kick her out of the room right next to us because I didn't want them screaming the entire time. Could have made for some interesting background noise, but it would have gotten annoying after like 10 minutes. So yeah, like it's really interesting to see like how that can go if like you don't have any life outside of each other, and that's either gonna push each other apart, and or it's gonna bring you together. And yeah, like it's definitely interesting to see how that dynamic goes. And like for us, it really led to a more sheltered style where like we've really grown on our own. And I think that's a very
Mm-hmm.
important thing, parenting wise, like to let kids just learn from their own experiences and let
Yeah.
kids really grow into themselves and like not teach them the way to do things because then what happens when you're not there. But
Yeah.
yeah, like that's really interesting to hear the parallels there.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's definitely interesting. So, hmm. Would you consider yourself more of an introvert or an ambivert? Because I've never heard anyone that like says that like even around friends they don't like have some elements of extrovertedness.
Um, yeah, I would say just mostly I'm an introvert. There are definitely like a couple times. It's only with like few specific people, like my brother being one of them, where I'm just completely comfortable. But even then, when I'm with um like one of my closest friends, I won't say something or I won't do something unless like I've thought it out. Well, I feel like everything I have to do is well thought out because I don't want to be judged for it. I guess I don't know. Just being with people is kind of like mentally taxing to me, and it just like making decisions that is gonna like affect what they supposedly think of me, even though maybe they've known me for like 15 years or whatever. Making decisions that they might judge me for is mentally taxing for me.
Oh, well, you're preaching to the choir right there. For me, like any interaction with someone is a constant competition, and it's always let's get a leg, either get a leg up on them, or let's make sure to guide them in a certain direction where they're going to have this conclusion, and like it's just constantly you're on guard and you're just making sure that like you haven't put yourself in a situation where they're going to ask this question next because you know what that question is going to lead to, and then that question, and then it's going to lead to this conclusion that you don't like. And yeah, like it is interesting to do that in a lot of ways, and it's a lot of fun sometimes. And then a lot of times it's not fun when you're like, oh crap, I screwed myself there. I didn't realize that's gonna happen. In 5 minutes, he's gonna ask this question. I have to get out of here. And yeah, like it does make things look very stressful. And luckily, I'm young right now, where I can handle that stress just fine because bountiful amounts of energy. But yeah, like it's definitely makes it a struggle to not really trust anybody. And yeah, like I'm definitely the kind of person that someone's like, oh, I trust him completely, and I would tell him anything. I'm like, you would? Well, he's not going to be around that much longer. And like,
uh,
yeah, like you prove yourself every day, unfortunately. And like in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. And really, I would say it's a good thing almost all the time because like yeah, would you want to be in a situation where like you can get away with anything on this one day just because of the past 10 years of goodwill that you've bought up?
like it just wouldn't accomplish anything. I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. And it is interesting to see how many of like these situations we have shared experiences on. It's very interesting to see. Okay, so I think that pretty much encapsulates what we do for fun. Okay. So you mentioned your brother's going through a whole nutritional kink, not kink, kick. That's a different thing. So, how do you feel like this affected you, and like, what are some of the lessons you've taken away from it?
So I guess our whole like family nutrition element kind of changed. My dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes like 2 years ago.
Ah, it sucks.
So he started eating differently just out of like necessity,
Yeah,
obviously. And then my brother was like, wait, he's getting skinnier. And my brother has always been, or both of us have always been like really self conscious about how we look, not only to other people, but how we look to ourselves, which I guess is the main thing most people deal with.
yeah.
So he's kind of like at first last summer, he pretty much like starved himself
Uh,
to try to get himself to be skinnier, and luckily we let him out of that. So now he's become pretty well educated with all the information that's out there. Mostly, there's a lot of like YouTube nutrition and fitness channels. A lot of them give
yeah,
incorrect
definitely.
information, but you can take from all of them saying like some similar things. You can kind of take some important information from it, which he has, and he he works out for like an hour and a half every day now, and he also runs track, and he's just a very fit individual. For me, him being my best friend, seeing him like make that transformation in his life, and me knowing that I'm about to like go on to a chapter in my life where I'm supposedly going to have like more control, and I feel that I need to have like also control over my body and what I'm putting into my body. So I've kind of joined him in some ways on that.
Okay, that's really good to hear that he got past that phase. Because yeah, starving yourself is that's a tough one to get past. Because like
Mm-hmm.
initially it looks like the correct solution, and then if you just think about it for like a couple more minutes, you'll be like, okay, well, how's the body going to adjust to it? It's just going to lower its metabolic rate because it thinks that you're
Mm-hmm.
dying. So like it's A, not going to be effective, and B, going to be counterproductive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that he's past that, but. Yeah, like the whole nutrition thing has been something I've gotten hugely into in the past year. I would like to say that like it was some New Year's resolution, but it just happened that like I made a bunch of lifestyle changes around like
Yeah.
November, December, and like that just kind of happened surprisingly. So like one of the big things for me has been time tracking, but it's also been just food tracking. Like as much as I can, just putting everything that I eat into this food tracker, so
Yeah.
that like I'm gonna have the data, and like even if I'm not analyzing it right now, if I want to like in 2 years say, okay, how was I eating at this point in my life? How did I feel at this point? How was I
Mm-hmm.
happy about my body? Was I happy with how I felt after I ate? And like just having the data is so important because like this is something that I advocate to as many people as possible. If you can have the data, if you can have the information, you can do anything with it. Now, if you
Yeah.
don't have the data, you can't do anything with it. And like
Mm-hmm.
the world right now, it is so much driven based on A, who has data, and just B, like who knows how to use data. And like
Mm-hmm.
if you can do those two things, you're a very powerful person. Because like the tools are open to for anyone who wants to use them. It's just a question of motivation at this point. So
Yeah.
yeah, like it's so important to just put yourself out there and like actually chase these things down. So the food tracking has been awesome to see. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely changes some of the choices I make now. I'm much more so aiming for like about like 2,200, 2,500 calories a day. I like to
Mm-hmm.
aim for like about 100 calories for breakfast, and usually I like to start like with a more carb heavy breakfast to like get my body really started, and then I usually do what I would like to be doing, to be honest, is like about 600 calories around like 10:30, and then 600 around 1:30. But because of school, obviously that's not feasible. So
Mm-hmm.
usually I just I try and hit it about as best I could. I bring like 1,000 to like 1,100 calorie thermos and try and space that out over the course of the day. Because one of the
Yeah.
worst things you can do in terms of eating style is just eating a large calorie meal at once. Like
So actually, I've read like three studies, I think, within the past 6 months that have actually like led to something like saying against that. As long as you're regulating the time that you eat and regulating how much you eat, even if it's once a day, if it's at the same time and it's relatively the same amount of food, your body will adjust to it.
oh well, Okay, I guess that's a good point. Yeah, if you just do that consistently, I guess the body would adjust to anything. Hmm.
Hmm.
So like, is that over like an interval, or is that like all at once?
What do you mean? Like
Well,
the
like,
food?
like something that I've seen studies on like stuff like the Terrell Owens diet, where like you eat everything between the hours of like 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and like
Yeah,
obviously like 2,000 or 3,000 calories, but it's spaced out over that time. Like the biggest thing I'm talking about is like 1,000 calories like immediately, and like you
yeah,
just get that and like you're done in like 10 minutes, and then you're just going about your day. Like I don't think that's the
yeah. I
right
don't
approach.
think that's been a. I haven't at least seen any specific studies on that. I just know of the um, diets where you're eating for only a couple hours a day and then
Yeah.
nothing else but water.
Yeah, like I've seen that too, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just like not prepared for that right now. I need something for the rest of the day,
Hmm.
and I do wonder if like it's just something that you have to get over. But I don't know. I'm not really prepared for
Yeah,
that right now.
I agree.
So like, what's your philosophy of it? Do you like try and go for heavy lunches or heavy dinners? Like, the only thing I really know about your eating approach right now is you usually have like a protein bar or something for breakfast.
Yeah, I really struggle to eat at breakfast. I feel like nauseous if I eat within like, or eat like more than 300 or 400 calories within a couple hours of waking up. I have no idea why. It's just
Hmm.
something that I've kind of realized within the first, like, or I guess like the last couple of years, me trying to like eat more for breakfast. Um, I guess in general, I eat like a high protein diet, relatively like low carbs. I will eat a lot of like chicken at home. I don't bring a lot of like actual food to school just because it's not really convenient to like keep something like warm or whatever in your lunch bag. So I probably only eat like 500 or 600 calories while I'm at school, and I would have had like a 200 calorie protein bar, or 200 calories of fruit or whatever for breakfast at home. And then by the time I'm at dinner, I'm at 800 calories, and I kind of just like regulate myself around like 1600 to 800. I mean, 1600 to like 1800 a day. So I only have to eat like two chicken breasts and like some fish, or two chicken breasts and protein pasta. And then that's just like on school days. It's just like easier for me to regulate what I'm eating on school days because it's all kind of like the same. So then like on weekends it's obviously a lot harder because I'm in different places on the weekends, or my family wants to do something, or my friends want to do something. And then I kind of just, it's not like out of the window, but then I don't really focus on like macros as much as just like calories. Am I not going like way over? Am I staying like under 2,500 total? Because obviously, me eating less calories on average with the like 16 to 1,800, my metabolic rate is going to be lower than an average person's. So I don't want to go like up to 3,000 or whatever.
Yeah,
So I kind of just deal with it.
yeah, and I'd forgotten for a minute that like you're, what are you like 5'4" or 5'6"?
I'm like 5'2".
Oh, sorry. But yeah, like I'd forgotten that like your metabolic rate was going to be lower, and I was like, ooh, that's not very much. But yeah, like if you're burning less calories, you don't need as much. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's definitely a factor there. But yeah, like breakfast used to be something where like I would eat like a sizable meal for breakfast. I would have like I didn't do any food tracking at this point, but I imagine it's probably like 400, 500 calories for breakfast, and like very much so. And like even before I started doing food tracking, like in the past year and a half, I've just gone completely away from that. And like now I have like a banana or two for breakfast, and then that's it. And like I couldn't imagine going back to a situation where I have like a fajita, or like I have like a chicken breast for breakfast. That just seems bizarre to me at this point. And like that just
Yeah.
shows you how fast you adjust to like your new style.
Yeah, no, I feel like people overweigh, like maybe not completely overweigh the value of breakfast, but they think that the only thing that determines your like level of energy at the beginning of the day is what you eat. When in my life at least, I found that sleep is, of course, like the most important as to like how energized I am, and not just like how much I sleep, like how, like when I went to sleep or like when I woke up. Yeah, I think it's kind of just like people need to realize that it's more than just food that's making up how energized they are. It's also like how much water you're drinking, how much sleep you're getting, how much you're exercising.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't really understand why like there's such a big push in society to have like a sizable breakfast. Like people say like not only it's the most important meal of the day, like I see some people talking about how it should be like one of your biggest meals in the day, and like, I think that's absolutely crazy because like
Mm-hmm.
the first thing is your body isn't completely woken up when you're having breakfast. So like your metabolic rate isn't going to be completely going. So that's not going to be good for your body. Like when your metabolism isn't going, your body's going to convert it the food that it's suddenly been just deluged with into the quickest means they can get it out of there. So that immediately means fat. So, I mean,
Yeah.
for most people, that's not something that they want. And yeah, like I think it's got to just be a societal thing, and just people need to get over the fact that like it's not that important to have a big meal at breakfast. In a lot of ways, fasting at breakfast is helpful. I personally just have like something because like it's nice to have something, but
Yeah.
like I just don't get that. And I've seen a lot of research as well on like the value of like having like a just not immediately after you wake up, but like pretty soon after you wake up, just like almost like guzzling like a glass of water or something just to
Yeah.
get your body awake and like just doing that. So that's something I've definitely tried to do. That's
Mm-hmm.
been one of the things that really has changed the most about me since I've my diet since I started doing food tracking is I'm drinking a ton more water now.
Yeah.
Because like I used to have a huge problem about not getting enough water and having a horrible electrolyte imbalance, but now like I
Same.
drink like I don't know, like I bring like a water jug that's like 34 flow ounces to school every day. I usually drink about two of those, and then like a
Mm-hmm.
16-ounce glass at home. So like
Yeah.
I'm getting like
What you
140,
need. Yeah.
yeah, what you need, and like just enough that like your body is moving quickly, and like it's not healthy if you go to school and like you don't pee at all when you're at
Yeah.
school, and like you don't go home get home until 4 and then you go to the bathroom. That's not, first of all, that's not healthy for your bladder. Like you probably stretching that out a little bit. You should probably stop doing that. But like you should be regularly using the bathroom, and like you shouldn't be dehydrated. And like that's one of the first things you can change, and one of the easiest things. Just like when you have a spare moment or something, just take a sip of water or whatever. Like I just for me. This is like going back to what I was saying earlier. I couldn't imagine drinking as little water as I used to. Like that'd be bizarre. Like I used to bring like a here I have it in front of me right now, like a 17-ounce Deer Park water bottle to school, and that would be all I would drink during that
Mm-hmm.
day, or like even less than that sometimes. Something like that was ridiculous, especially considering how much more sodium I was getting in my diet at that point. So I couldn't even understand that. But
Yeah. No. I
yeah,
guess your body's really good at just adapting and like
oh yeah,
dealing with whatever situation you give to it. But it's just so clear to see when you kind of experiment with your diet and experiment with sleep and water and all that stuff, what it really wants and what it really deals best with. And it's different for everyone, but obviously there's trends, and water has been like a big part of like the change in my diet as well.
yeah. So like, how has it changed for you?
I used to have like the same problem where I really didn't drink like anything, but now I actually have like this app on my phone that tracks how much water I'm drinking. So I just make sure, like when I get up and when I eat the small amount I do for breakfast or before I leave for school, I'll drink like 20 ounces of water,
Oh wow,
and then
that's pretty good.
I make sure to drink like 10 gulps of water or whatever, like at a water fountain between every single class because I don't bring a bottle of water, which I probably should, but it's like a month of school left.
Yeah,
And then I just make sure to whatever, like I'll drink like 3 more 20-ounce things of water sometime when I'm home. And I'm drinking a lot more now, and I don't feel dehydrated ever. And I won't say I don't feel like unenergized at times, because you're going to feel unenergized again for like other reasons. One, dietary factor is never going to be like the end all be all for how you're feeling, but in general, I'm feeling like better and more energized.
yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. Like I feel like my energy level this year has been the best that it's ever been, and like I constantly feel like if I want to be energized, I can be, and like when I don't want to be, that's something that a lot of people miss. Like energy gives you the power to not show that you're like super energetic, and it
Mm.
lets you be more in control, and just lets your brain fire faster, and just be able to like do more things if it wants to, and like slow down if it wants to. And it's really helpful for someone like me that values control over pretty much anything else. But
Mhm.
yeah, like one of the other big things that's changed about me and my diet in the recent past has been, so I used to have a horrible problem with snacking. So I
Mhm.
don't know if you saw me at all in like freshman or sophomore year, but like I would always like have like a bag of goldfish on me, or like a pack of Ritz crackers, or just something stupid like that, and like just something that was like laden in salt. And let me change that, laced in salt, and just bombarding my body with like a bunch of chemicals and whatnot that it does not need. And like
Yeah.
it got as bad to the point that like May of last year, I was eating like 4 packs of Ritz crackers a day, which
And
is insane. Like
yeah.
you're gonna destroy your body with that amount of salt. And like the biggest thing with me in making changes in my life is setting some kind of streak and just being like, I gotta keep that streak. I can't let that streak die, because if that streak dies, then I'm just gonna feel like I have nothing. And
Yeah. No.
like what really changed it for me was over the past summer, I did a pre-college experience at
Mhm.
Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New York, and that meant that I was going to be away from my family, the comforts of my home, whatnot, my normal lifestyle for 2.5 weeks. So I said, if I can just go from the point that school ends to that pre-college thing, and then after that, if I can make it back home, that's going to be like 5 weeks right there, and that is more than enough to set a streak, and maybe I can keep it up past then. So
Mhm.
I, struggled as hard as I could for like 3 weeks, and then made it through that the 2.5 weeks a little bit better, and yeah, like just it's been amazing. But I haven't had that many problems with snacks ever since. Like I haven't had like a packaged snack literally since that point, which it's unbelievable to me. And it's really annoying with cravings because like they're really deep set, and like I don't know where it is. I read one thing one time where there's like this kidney transplant person that like got this weird craving for asparagus just because she had a transplant. So I
That's
don't know,
weird.
maybe it's in your kidneys or something. I don't know, maybe your liver. But yeah, like it is really hard to get rid of cravings, and like
Yeah.
you can not have something for literally 9 months in my case, and like you go downstairs and you're like, damn, I wish I could have some Ritz crackers right now. And like you just don't get past them, and it's really difficult. So I say all that to say, like, do you have any cravings, and like how have you handled them during this time?
Yeah. Absolutely. So how I handle them is I kind of do like refeed days or whatever. It's more of a like fitness term for people who like actively cut and then bulk, whether to gain muscle or get fat. Are you familiar with those terms?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge UFC fan, so like I know all about like weight
Yeah.
cutting.
So like I just my brother actively like cuts and bulks just because there's really no reason to him for him to, just because he's so new to weightlifting. He could pretty much cut all the time essentially, and he'd still be building muscle. But I mean, anyway, he does that. So then he'll give himself like refeed days where he'll just eat food that he wants, and he'll go like 1,000 calories over, and it just kind of makes him. He realizes the next day, and I do too. Like when you put food in your body that it's not used to having anymore, even though you used to love it, it hates it, and it like hates you for it. You feel awful the next day, or you feel awful after you eat it, not only mentally because you know it was really bad for your body, but also physically, just because it's not prepared to take all those chemicals in like it used to. And it just kind of reminds you, okay, it's fine. And then until you get the next craving, and you can hold it off for another week longer, and maybe you do one of those refeed days like once every month or something, and it just kind of keeps you in check. And 1,000 calories and a couple hours of your body not feeling great isn't too bad to satisfy cravings for 2 weeks or whatever.
Okay, how do you think that compares with what traditional diets sometimes advocate being cheat days?
Um, I think people when they think about cheat days, they try to go like way overboard. Like the whole 10,000 calorie challenge, that whole thing
Is that a
that
thing?
kind of
Oh my God.
exploded like in the summer on YouTube. Maybe it was the summer, maybe it was like late fall, where people would just do their best to try and eat 10,000 calories within the course of 24 hours, and that's just
That's the worst challenge I've ever heard.
that's too much. Your body isn't meant to do that. Um, I think I'm an advocate more of like cheat meals, saying, "Hey, I'm really hungry, or I'm really like craving this particular thing, and it's been a while since I've like treated myself. One meal, no matter how much I eat, unless I'm like some competitive eater or whatever,
Yeah.
is not gonna make like some huge difference on my body. I can only eat but so much, and I'm really not gonna want but so much anyway. So if you just say you cut out like a block of time and you say this is when I'm gonna go do this, and after that I'm gonna be clean again, and it just kind of helps with cravings, I think, and that's what I prefer doing, I guess.
Okay. And I feel like that's the smartest thing to do, honestly. The problem for me is just I'm in a lot of ways I'm not a black and white person, but like
Mm-hmm.
you're okay, let me summarize this better. So, in a lot of ways I'm not a black and white person towards other people, but I'm a very black and white person towards myself. Like when I'm alone, I'm a black and white person. I deal with myself in black and white ways, but like I deal with other people in very gray ways and in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, I think that follows the ambivert thing. But yeah, like for me, I just have to have those kinds of streaks because like it doesn't matter to me at all if like like if I eat snack tomorrow or something, then I would just be like, okay, well, it doesn't matter anymore. I might as well just snack the next day and the next day and the next day. And like it's just like the black and white thing. It saves me from having to worry about that. And like yes, I recognize that like cheat meals are the best scenario, but like it just doesn't work for someone like me, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that definitely does sound better than cheat days. And wow, I've never heard about that 10,000 calories in a day thing. That's horrible.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine like eating that much food.
Yeah, that's like literally like an eating competition. I think I was reading
Yeah,
about like Joey Chestnut or whatever, and like that's like 15,000 calories in a
yeah,
meal. So like, yeah, that's just stupid.
yeah.
Like I don't even know why people were trying that. Like that's not even like a fun
People
thing.
for views, I guess.
Oh, there's so many better challenges than that.
Yeah.
And one of the other big things with food for me has been and like just changing the flavors that like I really value.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for me like sodium obviously was a massive problem, but now like I've almost completely transitioned my diet to one where like I really value spiciness actually, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how like valuable spiciness is because like there unless you're being like a moron or something like eating a ghost pepper or something, you're essentially not going to have any health benefits to putting like a spice on something, no matter how much you put on. And
Yeah,
if you compare that to sodium, if you put a bunch of sodium on something, you're hurting your cholesterol, buddy. You're like
yeah.
gonna make yourself dehydrated. You put a bunch of sugar on something, you're killing your cell linings and your arteries and whatnot. But I mean, you put as much as you want, and like it's not going to hurt you unless you have acid reflux, and that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool.
Yeah. So I think I've dealt with that not in the same way, but I've kind of like I vary my vegetables now. Obviously, like not all vegetables are created equal in terms of nutrition, but in like sandwiches, um, like some days I'll just literally like put corn on my sandwiches or put like carrots on my sandwiches just to like switch it up. I always have to be like changing um, like what I'm tasting so that I don't get like bored with it or I just hate eating the same thing over and over again because it's really hard to eat something that you don't want to eat. But if you keep it different, then I don't know. That's just how I cope with it, I guess.
Yeah, I can support that. That's a strong choice right there to just put a bunch of like different vegetables on it, like occasionally, because yeah, that's a cool thing. Like when you're just eating something, you're like, oh, that was different. That was kind of nice, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I can definitely relate to that. And vegetables are something I still struggle with because I mean it's just a pain in the butt to get vegetables into your diet, and
Mm-hmm.
I constantly debate if like I should switch to like just having like kale shakes or something. But something that's been really big for me is just only drinking water as my drink. Like I
Yeah.
used to do something where like I would have orange juice in the morning, and then I looked up this nutritional statistics. I'm like, oh my god, that's a lot of
Yeah.
that's a lot
Not
of
great.
sugar. Oh my gosh. But yeah, like I obviously just drink water now, and that's something that I think I'm gonna keep that way for as long as I
Yeah.
can. And I think in college it's gonna get better because like I don't have to worry about making the vegetables or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can just go to the buffet table, grab like a handful of broccoli or whatever. Hopefully I use this spoon actually, and like just I don't have to worry about it. It's super easy to get, and
Mhm.
I think that's something that'll get solved then. But I've always been a lot better about getting fruit because like if either fruit tastes good or like it's super easy to get. You can just pick up an apple, you can pick up a banana, you can dump a bunch of blackberries into a bowl or something, and then you're just done with it.
Yeah. I think another part you talked about college and the easiness of getting vegetables. The other problem, like it's just so easy in college to go to the buffet and eat whatever you want. So it's really going to be interesting to see how I personally and try to figure out how others deal with the temptation of just like eating whatever every time you go because there's a lot of stuff there. And yeah, honestly, so I visited Virginia Tech.
Oh yeah,
I
well,
think like
have
three
fun with
weeks
that.
ago, and obviously they're proud of being like one of the best schools for dining in the country or whatever. And I went in this one place, and it probably was just a very poor place to choose. It was a buffet style dining hall, but they really didn't have anything that I would say that I would want to eat on a regular basis in terms of nutrition. Everything was quite clearly like over processed, or it was just super high in fat, and I try to go for low fat. Sorry, not low fat. Super high in like carbs, and I try to go for low carbs. And it's going to be interesting to try to deal with that.
Yeah, and like for me, the only real craving that I haven't gotten over at this point, and like this will circle back. Don't worry. Has been like I always joke about this with my friends, but like I'm a bit of a pizza fiend, and like
Mm-hmm.
pizza's always been like a comfort food for me because I have a lot of food allergies, and like whenever like I would be going out to eat or something with my family, like they would get Chinese food or something, and then I could always count on being able to have pizza or something. And like unfortunately, pizza isn't the best food for you. Like it's
Yeah.
not terrible in a lot of senses, but it's not good for you. It's a bunch of bread that's on that has some tomato sauce on it, and usually is doused in like some kind of oil or fat. And and fat does get a bad rap, but I mean it's still not something you want to be going heavy on. So
Mm-hmm.
so like that's not great. So that's gonna be my main problem is just managing like the amounts of pizza that I'm having. So I'm just crossing my fingers that Case Western isn't going to have too much pizza to offer on the buffet table. But yeah, like that'll be my only real problem there. And luckily, I don't have to worry about desserts too much because I've just never been a dessert guy. It seems like for the most part, boys, they're a sweet guy or they're a salty guy. And like it's just a 50-50 thing.
Yeah. I think with the whole food allergy thing, I had a lot of food allergies when I'm younger, and I still kind of deal with some of them.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's really like it speaks to the whole like nutrition thing in general when you're saying like it's really hard to branch out. Like your body doesn't want to branch out from what you eat. My brother's a really good example. He had a peanut allergy until he was like 11, and now he just completely hates the taste of peanut butter. He hates smelling it, and he has like this ultra keen sense and ability to taste peanut butter and things when like no one else can. It's really interesting, but regardless, he just hates it. So it's really, and it's the same thing in like general nutrition and eating. If you're used to something, it's really really hard to try to get off of it, and that's true for everything. You kind of just gotta force your body to do something it's not used to if you know it's going to be for the better.
Yeah, and like in that sense, that's why I like having food allergies in a lot of ways. Is just I always have, and like this, it comes down to like a control thing. Like I always like having an excuse going in, because like I always have something that you can pin it on, and then like that's your reason. Like even if it's not impacting me, so like it's not an excuse for me. Hey, you're using it as one, so whatever. So like
Mm-hmm.
food allergies for me are like a big thing. Like where I can always be like, okay, well, hey, buddy, you're always working from behind on me. What are you gonna do? And like it just I don't have to worry about this food group anymore. And like
Mm-hmm.
it can be annoying with stuff like the FDA not protecting for cumin anymore in Mexican food, so just had to chop that one off the menu. But I mean, it ultimately helps, like just having your options limited, so you have less things to think about, especially for someone like you and I, where we are indecisive in a lot of ways. That it makes it a lot easier. And yeah, like it's definitely a cool thing to have allergies in a lot of ways, like because it's just different, and like it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun to be different in a lot of ways. And like, what were your experiences growing up with food allergies? Just the standard stuff where don't go near that or whatnot, and like, were your parents super protective about it?
They were really protective about it. It was, I think the a thing looking back is I kind of just ate like the same like six or seven things constantly,
Mm.
and it it really came to be like a struggle once I got older and once I started like growing out of some of my food allergies. So it was hard to like mentally branch out and say, wait, I can eat this now. And so now I'm kind of slowly delving into like trying new things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to try prior because of food allergies, like baked goods, or like I said, I've been baking lately, and obviously I used to have an egg allergy, and I couldn't eat cakes for like 12 or 13 years. So it's just getting myself to try new things, and it's a long road, I guess.
No, definitely. It's hard to get over a lifestyle that you used to have. It's just changing everything that your body's conditioned to, and that takes a lot of time. And I've never understood that whole cake thing. Like, cake, it just seems like it's overwhelmingly sweet, and like it's just off-putting at that point.
Yeah, I think it really depends on like where you get it from. Um, Most cheap cakes really do have that quality. Um, there's this place on Midlothian Turnpike and Courthouse. It's called Small Cakes. It's like a franchise, and that's like one of the first like really good cake places I ever went. And I think that's the reason you just talked about was the reason why I liked it so much. It wasn't overwhelmingly sweet, and I could eat like two or three cupcakes. I wouldn't eat two or three cupcakes,
Yeah.
but I could eat like two or three cupcakes. I thought without like having that overwhelmingly sweet problem. So that like when I make cakes with my brother, that's like one of my main goals is to make sure that it has that same quality of it's not overwhelmingly sweet, and it has obviously not like some savory sense to it, but it's not like biting your tongue and saying, "Hey, you can only have like a couple bites before this before you're just like completely overwhelmed."
Yeah, that can be saved for the meat pies. But but yeah, like what do you really enjoy about baking? Because that's something that I definitely want to get into at some point, and I frankly just don't have the time to do it at home because I'm not going to be making meals at like 8:30 at night.
Yeah, I think one of the most attractive things to me about it is like experimenting with it, and that's kind of how I get like into anything is kind of experimenting and seeing like what I can do, how good I can get at it, and like what people think of how like my cakes will turn out. And I also I do most of the decorating when I make cakes with my brother, so that's just like a fun thing. I've never really been into like painting or drawing or anything, but like decorating cakes and making it look like aesthetically pleasing is a really fun thing to me, and it's a really cool way I think for me to get into something I've never really been into.
Okay. And I can definitely understand that. Yeah, it's definitely something I want to try out at some point. Do you enjoy more baking than cooking? It seems like that's the general vibe I'm getting.
Um, I don't have a lot of experience in like cooking. I'm the kind of person like we talked about earlier, like not getting out of old habits. I cook like 4 or 5 dishes regularly, and I just it's more like cakes where I talked about experimenting. I do a lot of experimenting with cakes, so I kind of enjoy it more. But I haven't had the like audacity when I'm making something for like my entire family to just experiment it with it and maybe mess up and get like yelled at for wasting ingredients or whatever.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that. So in that sense, are cakes your a favorite thing to bake slash cook?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so is there anything else we have on food? Let's see. No, I don't actually. Yeah. So this is always an icebreaker question for me, but why not an hour and a half and break this one out? So usually I have people rank their feelings on like the six different flavors slash tastes, because like it's an interesting thing. Like not many people like to rank that, and I'm a big ranker myself. So I'm curious to see where you would rank the six flavors. Those being sweet, savory, salty, bitter, sour, and spicy. And like you could throw in fat if you want, but like that barely
Mhm.
counts.
So I know bitter has to go last. I just have an aversion to bitter things. I have no idea why. Or maybe I think it might just be the acidity because I think sour would also be like one of my last ones. And then you said the other four were salty, sweet, savory, and what?
And let's see, yeah, salty, sweet, savory, and spicy.
Spicy. Um, I feel like spicy is in like a completely different category than the other three.
Yeah.
I I do like eating spicy things, but I do it more so just for the sake of eating spicy things than like if I'm gonna eat something spicy, I do it because it's spicy. I don't like do it to add like excitement to like
Yeah.
my own dishes
Like it's
where
almost a
like
personal challenge.
yeah. So like there's I'm not gonna go into it too much, but there's like a lollipop at Second and Charles that's it claims to be like the hottest lollipop in the world, and like there was just a challenge. It was like keep it in your mouth for 5 minutes, and I just absolutely could not do it. But that's just kind of the thing I do with spicy. So I would say it wouldn't be my favorite in that sense. I put it at like third to last,
Okay.
and then so we got sweet, savory,
And then salty.
and
Salty.
salty. Salty, I don't like because well, I do like salty. We're just getting into things I like less than my favorite things, I guess, at this
Yeah.
point. Salty, the thing I don't like about it is you can with the whole water thing, you just feel like you're not you feel like you're dehydrated, and I just don't love having that feeling. And also the whole like when you're eating really salty things, your tongue kind of feels like
Oh yeah, yeah,
numb,
I
I
know what you're
guess.
talking about. Yeah, it just feels like your pores are like inflamed almost.
Yeah, it's not a fun feeling. So that would go third, and then sweet and savory. I think I would go savory as first, just because I feel like you can definitely eat more of savory things and you can enjoy it for longer than most sweet things we talked about, like cakes being overly sweet. Most sweet things are overly sweet. It's really hard to get away from that. So I would just choose savory for the sake of me being able to eat more of it if I wanted to.
Yeah, and I guess you don't really see overly savory things. You don't see like, oh man, that steak was way too meaty. I really felt the cow on that one. Like that's just not something that happens. So yeah, it's an interesting point. And yeah, for me, like I just decided to write this down at this point because I've asked this question like 6 times and I got sick of trying to remember it and screwing it up. So like for me, I just go spicy, then salty. Yeah, like obviously salty is a big thing for me, but I think spicy's honestly moved past it at this point
Mm-hmm.
just because first of all, like I feel completely confident in having them. Like okay, I don't even care, and like yeah, I can definitely relate to that personal challenge thing. Like it makes eating something spicy fun because like it's always like you're challenging a new best or something or like you know you're doing that. And, like I have one like habanero flakes downstairs and like that's a cool thing. I still have ghost pepper flakes, but I'm hesitant to break those out yet because I like yes pepper flakes are a lot less spicy than actual pepper, but I'm gonna hold off on that one for a little while.
Yeah,
And
I would
then
too.
yeah, so I have salty, then savory because you know savory's cool, and then the rest of them you could almost just interchange because I don't care for them much at all. Bitter and then sour and then sweet. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
sweet and like I just don't like sweet things that much. Like I ate candy as a kid. I don't know why. I just don't like sweet things anymore. But it's not like I don't like them. It's just sorry. It's not that I have an aversion for them. It's just I don't like them. And like that's just a weird thing because like I used to always like having Jolly Ranchers or something or just something like that, but
Mm-hmm.
now I just don't for some reason. And I've just never liked sour things. I just can't relate to that experience at all. And
Yeah.
bitter just doesn't bother me. Like if someone's like, oh, this the broccoli tastes bitter or whatever. I'm like, yeah, tastes fine to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of how I come down on that one. But
Yeah.
what combination do you feel like is underutilized in dishes, and that like you'd like to see more dishes use of those six?
Um, underutilized. I feel like like sweet and spicy. It's not that it's underutilized for a reason. Generally, it's because most people don't do it well. But I've had a couple things. There was this spicy ginger ale I've tried, and it was just an incredible thing. If it's done correctly, it's really good, and it's special because you don't get a lot of things that even attempt to do it.
Okay, yeah, that's actually really interesting. And even though I don't like sweet things that much, I'd be really curious to try something like that. That's actually an
Mm-hmm.
awesome answer. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And then one last thing to conclude the food discussion. Hopefully, no one was eating during this. I'm sure we didn't help your appetite at all. Like, what's like the favorite food that you just have not had in a long time, and like you really want to try again sometime?
Ah, goodness. I don't know. I feel like if I want food, then I'll go out and I'll eat it on one of those like cheap meals or whatever. There's not a lot of foods that
Oh well,
I
no,
just
not like stuff that
restrict.
not like stuff you're restricting on. Sorry, just like stuff that you can't get. Like for here, I'll give my example then. So like for me, it's something like cactus soup because like where on earth am I gonna get cactus soup? But like so, this one time in middle school, I had cactus soup and it was awesome, and I'm like, oh wow, this is so cool. I'm eating cactus
Mm.
soup, and like it tastes really good, and like I, I'm not gonna get cactus soup again anytime soon. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a specific dish for me. It might be like there's a ice cream place down in like Myrtle Beach called Cole's, and it's like the best ice cream I've ever had. And I kind of miss having ice cream, not as good as that, but I think that's the closest thing I have to not having something that I've wanted to have for a while.
Okay, fair enough. And yeah, like along with that cactus thing, there was also this cactus lemonade I had one time that was really good. I had no clue how they made it, but it was really good. I don't know why I'm a fan of the cactus, but I don't know, something really prickles me about that. So
Yeah.
yeah, the zinger. Ooh. But okay, yeah, I guess we can move past the food stuff finally. So I'm assuming you don't watch many sports. Is that right, or like am I just completely wrong and triple downing on that?
I don't actively follow them. I when they're on, my dad watches all out football, and like I understand football. Obviously, I think I understand it more than like the average person, just because like it's usually on, and I used to play it a lot with my brother, and we did have like this sports phenom living just up the street before he moved. So we used to play like a lot of sports. I played baseball for like 8 or 9 years, one of those two.
Oh wow.
So I watched baseball for a while. I just recently, like within the past 2 years, stopped keeping up with MLB baseball. I've never been a fan of like college sports. The only like sport I actively watch now, or if you want to call it a sport, is F1 racing. That's
Oh,
about it.
okay. Well, I'm really happy to hear that because I've been wanting to ask someone about what they think about that. But I'll get into the general stuff and just write a note down here to ask you about F1 racing because I'm very curious to see what you think about that. Okay. So, uh, why do you think for a lot of people like there's like it seems like there's a big push within MFSI at least where like not a lot of people watch sports and like they're almost like aggressively against it and like oh I'm not a sports person, what's a sports ball, like why do you think that happens and like why do you think it's such a big difference compared to the general populace?
I really feel like, um, or at least in my experience, it hasn't been like an aggressive push against sports as much as a disinterest and therefore a lack of like investment of time. We don't have a lot of time as it is, and it's a big investment of time to like say you want to follow a specific sport, especially like a professional sport, whether it be like MLB where there's games literally every single day, or NFL where you're just going to be watching games for an entire day if you're really into it, and that's just a time commitment that most of us can't make.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And that comes up actually a lot in just conversations I've had with my dad, where like, I'll ask him like, why the football is the only thing you watch. And he's like, I can't follow any other sports. Like, at best, I can watch 16 games in a season. Like, that's if I'm that's if he's lucky, just because like we're all so busy and like.
Hmm.
At best, we can get like 1 day a week where we can watch sports, and like to expect us to watch 82 games in a season, to expect us to watch 162 games in a season,
Yeah.
and like that's not even including playoffs. Like
Hmm.
it's just a massive time commitment. I guess we just don't have the time for it really. But
Yeah.
if there was a hypothetical sport that like was just made up like in your mind or something, or like you could just create a new sport, what do you think it would look like?
Um, like inventing a new sport or like the time slots that they would play.
No, no, more so inventing the sport. I think the
Inventing a
time slot would
sport.
just come down to like when you're free.
Hmm. Um, that's really an interesting one. I can't say I've ever like really thought about it. I feel like coming up with a sport is something that just happens. Like you just, it's kind of the thing where kids might be playing and they'll just eventually come up with a new game, and it's something that eventually happens. It's not really something that's thought up a lot unless you've been thinking about it for quite some time, and I haven't been. I don't have an answer to that.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I don't know how I would answer that question personally. I'd probably just compare it to some sports that I think would be kind of close to like what I would imagine a good sport would be, like something like MMA, where like the games that like you're not the games, the actual competition that you're having. It's not based on some made up parameters where oh you're trying to shoot the ball in the hoop or kick the ball
Mm-hmm.
into the goal or run past a bunch of people and not get your head chopped off like in football. Like the only objective is just to beat your opponent in any way that you can think to, unless you're kicking them in the nuts. But that's not a nice thing to do. So yeah, like, I just think that's really cool that like it's such an open sport and that like you can just do anything that you think of as long as it's
Mm-hmm.
not illegal and then like you just win and like it's a really cool thing and that's a movement that I feel like I'm seeing in sports lately. It's just moving more and more away from traditional sports where like it's like it's like a ball and hand game, or like it's a game defined by its rule set, and it's much more so just like doing some human action and like just working through that, and like anyone can relate to it in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why I'm into MMA. But unfortunately, no one else in our school is, so I never get to talk to anyone about it. But oh
Yeah.
well, maybe I'll find someone in college. So that's just me though. So have you ever heard of finger jousting?
Finger jousting.
Yeah.
I recognize the term, but I can't say I know what it is.
You'll have to look up a picture of it because it's a sport that I've seen that I think is really cool. And like every time I get to like try and get someone involved in doing it, like nobody ever wants to do it because it's like what the heck is finger adjusting? Wait, why'd you just grab my hand? Like it's just yeah, I don't know. It's not a particularly comfortable thing. Basically, the idea is like you have two people and like one hand is like behind your back, and then the other hand you just reach out and like you hold the other person's hand and like you point your index finger out and you're trying to touch the other person, and
Oh,
that's
that's
it.
interesting.
Yeah, and like that's the only goal. And like it's such an exciting game because like the entire time you're just thrusting and like you're trying to get the other person, like you're trying to use your leverage and like you're trying to reach around and like oh no they blocked you and then it's just a really fun sport and it's super exciting because
Oh,
like
it
the
seems
entire
pretty
time
interesting.
like you're moving around too. It's not just standing in one place. Like you're pulling the other person over here and like running over here with them and like it's really cool. I don't know why more people don't do it. To be honest, I'll probably ask Yash if he wants to do it tomorrow morning. I know he's not going to want to, but I'll see. So yeah, okay. So that's finger jousting for you. Hopefully you looked up that picture so you have some context and you're not just thinking about
I did,
thrusting.
yes.
Okay, good. So okay. So what do you think about a recent trend that's been not really a recent trend, just like a startup that's been going on in sports right now, where video games have been really taking the forefront for a lot of people and getting them involved in sports, specifically E-League. And like, do you think that there's a real market out there for video games being turned into sports?
Yeah, I think nowadays a lot, yes, a greater number of people identify with the gamers who are playing the video games because I football players and basketball players and whoever, like everyone still plays video games regardless of whether you're like athletic or not. Well, not everyone, but a majority of people, no matter what you do, video games have become like a huge thing for adults and kids. So it's just, I think there's a huge market for like people. The point of sports is to make money through sponsorships and viewership, and there's just so much like available viewership out there because so many people want to watch and they want to see, oh, hey, how do these people play? How can I get better at this game? How can I like be my friends, or what are these guys doing? Or is it just sometimes it's just cool to watch the competitive aspect of it? So I
Yeah.
mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why people watch it, and that's why I think it's going to like continue to be successful.
Yeah, my only thing with watching video games as sports is it's a lot more difficult, and like this is just comes down to like how I watch sports. Is I like to focus on like the game as a whole, and I like to be able to be looking at the game and see the entire thing that's happening. So like if I'm watching basketball, I can see the entire court at once. If I want to like glance over here, I can see the other players out of the corner of my eye. But with video games, just watching like E-League a couple times, because you're curious, you want to see how like it looks when like Overwatch League is happening, or like
Mm-hmm.
they're playing League of Legends or something. You just can't do that, and like it's constantly flipping around, and like you always feel like you're missing something. So I feel like in
Yeah.
that sense, one-on-one sports would be a lot more interesting to see, which isn't really
Mm-hmm.
something that they're focusing on as much, which kind of sucks. But I'm sure that'll gain its avenue because it seems like for the most part they're basing leaks around specific games, which is a really cool thing. So like
Yeah.
it's not actually just one game.
I mean, that being said, there are still like there's a whole fighting game tournament that happens every summer called Genesis, and that kind of like solves the problem that you were just talking about with not being able to focus on where you want to at once. Because of course, with fighting games, it's almost always one on one, or at the
Yeah,
most like two on two.
and that was the
So
exact thing I had in mind. Yeah.
yeah, so I think fighting games in the future are going to pick up steam along with the strategy games.
Yeah, I think we just need like another groundbreaking fighting game to come out, and then that happens immediately. It's just everyone's investment right now is in FPS games, and
Yeah.
obviously the culture will change over time. It always does. And once too many people are involved in FPS games, the equilibrium will shift, and people want to go back to the another form. So yeah, that'll be certainly interesting to see. I'll definitely be following that because that'd be pretty awesome. And I can't wait for society to make a huge push against why video gamers shouldn't be making a ton of money for doing sports because they already have a huge problem with normal sports players
Yeah.
making money. They're like, oh, this baseball player makes $300 million to go sit on the bench for an hour and then go swing a bat a couple of times. Like they always do that, and I,
Yeah.
I
It's
I'm sure
crazy, but
there's
they're making money because other people are making money, and it's all cyclical, I guess.
yeah, I mean they're making money because they provide a service that not everyone else can, and like some
Yeah.
people just can't accept that. They're like, oh, I could do that, and like they say that while like they're sitting on their couch eating a bunch of potato chips and like I don't know, just, doing whatever they're doing, and like I just don't understand the arguments around money in sports. I mean, like you feed into the system even if you don't like it. So I mean, what are you
Yeah.
doing? So okay, I guess we can come full circle then and talk about F1 racing because I'm very curious to see what like where like just how you came into that and like how you would summarize your feelings on that because that's something that I've been wanting to get into for a while now because like obviously like NASCAR's boring as all get out like you
Yeah.
make a couple left turns and whatever but F1
I
seems
agree.
really cool because like you obviously you're making turns to both sides but like the courses are really cool if you, like look at
Mm-hmm.
them and like there are some crazy turns and like just like you see like U-turns in the middle of it and like you have to slow down or you're gonna like take your head off or something on some of those turns like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a really cool thing. It seems super strategic.
Yeah. So I think why I got into F1. So F1 and also IndyCar are both like
Yeah.
the peak of automotive sports, I guess. But that whole strategy element is what got me into F1 a little bit more because I am like super analytical. Um, there's a lot more technology in F1 than there is in um, IndyCar, which is it makes it possible for the teams to have like a more like I guess relevant strategy. They can kind of look at the race ahead and say, hey, this is exactly what we need to do with our tires, or this is what we need to like plan to do with our fuel. And they're not obviously going all out the entire time. They're not saying, "Oh, hey, I'm just going to race the best I can this entire time." There's definitely strategy to it, and there's teams. The only really annoying thing about F1 is that the teams are they're kind of like not they're not equal at all. So
Yeah.
like there's 10 different constructors this season, which have 2 drivers each, and essentially the top 3 teams are the only one who ever have a chance at winning, just because they have the most money and they put the most money into their car, which is definitely a problem. But the whole engineering aspect of it and the strategy aspect is what got me so into it. I was looking into I never really understood how cars work, and over the summer I started trying to learn about what makes them work, and then of course I was like, well, what's the limit? What's like the best that we have? And I just came across those, and I was like, this is really cool. And it's when we're talking about time commitments to sports, it's really not such a big time commitment. It's like an hour and a half race, like 16, 17 times a year, and then maybe like 3 2-hour practices and a 1 hour qualifying for each of those races. It's really not that much of a time commitment.
Okay. Well, I think you've sold me on that, but so I'm definitely ask you afterwards about where I can find more of that because it seems like a lot of the problem of being an F1 fan in the U.S. is just where you're gonna actually hunt it down because obviously it's more European.
Yeah.
But what do you? Sorry, why did I go to there? I just didn't know where I was gonna take that. So. No, I actually have never heard of that whole team thing. I always assumed it was a very individual sport, and that might just be based on my very
Mhm.
basic understanding of racing. So, like, how does the whole competition thing work? Because I had always thought it was just like one person in the pit crew.
So essentially, there are, like I said, there's 10 teams, and each team has 2 drivers. There is a constructors championship, which is the team can win. So say you get the points are really weird. You only get points for scoring like in the top 10, and first place earns 5 points more than second place, and second place earns like 5 points more than third place, and then like 10th place only earns 1 point. So it's a really weird distribution that's heavily weighted towards the people who do like the absolute best. So it's just it's a weird thing. But anyway, so teams either try to foster their drivers to try to make the team the best it can be, or they try to they try to keep them as individuals and just say, hey, you guys do individually the best you can. And of course, there's a lot of gray area in that, but that's generally what they try to do. The best teams are obviously if you have 2 great drivers that are going to win the individual, then of course your team is going to have the most points too. But teams like to focus on one or the other as a strategy element, and that's kind of where the whole team thing comes in. You can help block people. If one racer is doing better, then you let them pass so that the team gets more points, or do you just in an individualistic strategy, you just don't let them pass and you kind of race it out between the two, which makes it pretty exciting. Actually, this past weekend on Sunday, one of the top 3 teams got both of their drivers out because they were fighting up for a position, and they both crashed within the last 5 laps
Oh
because of
wow,
that.
that's crazy right there. Wow. So why is it so like team dependent? Like in a lot of sports, you see it. Well, so yes, there are team sports, but in a lot of situations where you're on your own and you're not receiving direct assistance from someone else, it is a very individual sport. So why do you think F1 went down that route where you have these companies and corporations competing for the cup with a bunch of sponsored drivers?
I think the reason is essentially because of money. F1, I I have no idea how much a car is. It's a lot of money. It's millions and millions,
Yeah, I'll check.
per car, and they get trashed sometimes. The cars get ruined, and they have to replace elements every couple races because they're running so hard, and they're running at 12 to 15,000 RPM almost constantly. So they it's just the fact that only a couple companies want to sponsor it, and only a couple companies want to spend the millions of dollars not only on the cars but the millions on engineers who are going to be constantly working on a strategy and are going to be fixing the car and making it the best car it could possibly be. So if you only have like last season, I think there were 11 constructors. So it can range. It's not always 10. It's just however many like companies they want to like fill the grid, obviously within reason, and not that many always want to.
Okay, so just based on an infographic that I'm looking at from Business Insider, it looks like developing the car from basically research and development to in production model and actually racing, it costs about 40 million pounds, which I will now look up a pounds to dollars conversion because I didn't notice that was in pounds. So let me just do this real quick. 40, nope, not 401, 40. Okay, so that's like $55 million. Wow, that's a really expensive car.
Yeah, and it's under constant development. They're changing it like every race, so it's just
Yeah, like
it's a bit.
that's not even considering like salaries and then like also just the fact that you're not spending that once, you're spending that like once a month.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
well,
lot.
that's really incredible right there. Uh, would you like to see a system where like F1 is a more individual sport and like it is less top heavy and like would there be any way that you could get to that point?
I'd love to see it less top heavy. I like the fact that some teams focus on individual and some teams focus on like the team aspect, but I really don't think it's feasible to get some of the lower constructors to pay the amounts that the top ones do. Just because number one, they pay like a lot more for their drivers, like over 10 or 20 times more, and so they can just get the best drivers no matter what because they're willing to pay that, where the lower constructors aren't, and just because they're not willing to put in as much money, and I don't think it's ever going to be the case that either F1 is going to set regulations on how much money you can spend, just because the more money they spend, the like better the cars, and more people are going to be like infatuated with them. And it's a strategy that they've been using ever since it started, like however long ago. It's a very old system, but it's worked for them so far, and I don't think they're going to change it then.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like Europe is very big on no salary caps. Like, just you can spend as much money as you actually have available to you, and it certainly is better for the sport as a whole, at least business wise. If you have a system where like you can invest as much as you want in it, and that it's just going to go through the roof in terms of the technology, and also just you're going to have powerhouses like that. Same thing happens in the Premier League in English football. The same thing happens really in any football league throughout Europe. And it is interesting to see how that differs in American sports. We have football where like you got a super hard cap, and if you spend more than that, you're going to lose a couple draft picks. Or like you have a system like baseball where yes, there's luxury taxes, but if you're the Yankees, you can still spend like 300, $400 million, and nobody's really going to bat an eye. But well, yeah, bat an eye, but whatever. Like it's different to see like the different styles of sports, and like one of the things that I enjoy the most about looking at different sports is just seeing them as systems and like the way that they work. So that's really interesting. Is F1 really approaching any limits in terms of the peak capacity that they can reach? Because like everything's an asymptote, and like at some point you can only get to such a high RPM before you just have to completely overhaul what you're working with.
So I mean, they're not. Of course, there's a ton of elements to like every car, and they're definitely they've slowed down, of course, from where we started, but I doubt they're constantly the FIA, the like governing body for F1, is constantly making like changes to the rules, including like what part of the car is like allowed to be there. If they have to like scrap part of the engine because it's not good for some reason, they don't want to use it. They'll do random things just to like keep it new. So the engineers are constantly having to come up with like new solutions, and the cars are changing. But overall, the cars are getting faster and faster, and that's slowing down. I don't know when it's going to come to a halt, or if it's going to come to a halt before the sport becomes not relevant. But that is a general trend.
Okay, that's interesting. Then, like, what are they really pushing in terms of the technology? Are they pushing like the aerodynamics, or obviously
Yeah,
they're doing it
aerodynamics
all?
are a huge thing. They also the cars could essentially, um, without a driver, almost like drive themselves at full speed, like around the track with the computer technology. If they had a mechanism in there to drive the car, the computer could do it perfectly. They have like perfect like renderings of the track and how it's supposed to be, and they have perfect like weather information and how they. It's just a lot of stuff I don't understand, and there's a lot of information that goes through the car so that it's running at like optimal performance almost constantly. So I don't know what is going to happen next with it, but it's just really impressive, and it's mostly like data that they're using that they're taking in to say, hey, what can we regulate within the engine, and what can we regulate with like steering or whatever to make it so that the car is running optimally and just not wasting anything, so that we can get in first or whatever.
Okay, that's really fascinating. And just looking at some of the science behind it is unbelievable. Like even stuff that like was 50 years ago or so, stuff like the wind sail, where like that might not be the right term, but like the thing where like the car is angled so that like the air like underneath the car like it keeps it
Mm-hmm.
stuck to the track. So like you're not just gonna fly off the track and like your wheels are gonna stay in contact with the entire time. Well, that's a really cool thing, and like even though that's a super old technology at this point, it's still something that like I can't even understand. Like just
Yeah,
the general public isn't gonna understand. And yeah, like it's just unbelievable how far they're pushing the limits. How much do the laws of the actual sport limit the technology that's in place? And like it because it seems like they obviously want people to push farther and farther, but just
I
looking at
think that they don't try to like limit individual things. The way um, they don't create problems like intentionally, of course, but when they get rid of like certain technologies, or they say like this certain technology can now be added, then obviously they're allowing for the engineers to research in that area or research in a new area to solve a problem that they didn't previously have. And that's just kind of something they've had to deal with lately, is or more lately than ever, because just like 3 years ago, a new like car era came out, and the engines were just like completely different, and it just pretty much had to redesign the car completely. It's not like a not the same thing they've been working with for 50 years, and they're working up. They like worked with different a different amount of cylinders, different liter amounts. And it's just yeah, it's constantly changing. It's impressive, and they're always keeping the engineers on their toes, which is what is interesting about it to me.
okay, how close are they to like just going too fast so like people can't even react fast enough to turns, and like how early do they like have to prepare for the turns? And like is it something that everyone should be considering to make treks longer to compensate for the incredible speeds that they go at?
Um, I don't think they're gonna ever make tracks longer. It's just the fact that um, drivers have to be prepared. At this point, there are like technologies where drivers can pretty much go, and it's not like too difficult to go and memorize a track in a video game. And if the track's almost like exactly like how it's going to be, then you're prepared, or you should be prepared for everything. If you're getting paid millions of dollars to run a race, there's there should not be a situation where like a driver isn't prepared for a turn and doesn't know when to turn. The only like sticky situations come in like starts of races when there's a lot of variables and everyone's moving in really close proximity to each other, and people are trying to pass, and there's just like a lot of things happening. You just kind of have to figure it out. And yeah, there's races with a lot of crashes. Like this past weekend, there were 7 out of the 20 cars didn't finish the race.
Oh wow.
But 2 races ago, 19 out of 20 finished. It's just it really depends on the race.
But you can always expect to like have one or two drivers that just don't finish the race because it's so
Yeah,
difficult.
whether it's because of engine failure or the drivers are they follow the rules, but a couple like personalities really shine through like in their driving, and there's a couple drivers who like are notably aggressive with how they drive, and it gets them in a lot of trouble sometimes.
Okay. And it does fortune usually favor those aggressive drivers, or does it more often than not cause problems?
I would say lately it's caused more problems.
Okay. Well, that's interesting to see because you always see like in some sports where like oh it's always this really aggressive player and even though he gets a ton of fouls called against him, it still works out for him in the end because the fouls can only hamper him so much. But that's interesting to see that like at some point like the conservative style does win out there. Do you have a favorite racer personally?
Um, I don't think I do. I haven't been the racers. I don't really have like a favorite team or racer. I guess is the short answer.
Okay. Yeah, I can see why that is because like it's not so much based on just the racer itself; it's just the performance that's going on.
Yeah, I have like favorite personalities within the like association, but I don't have like a favorite driver to watch or whatever.
Okay. Do you know if Alex Davis is into F1 racing at all? Because I know he's super into cars.
Yes, he's into F1 racing. Elon Chueka is. Caleb Brown somewhat is. I think I'm not too sure, but
Hmm.
I know
Okay.
the three of them are. There's a fantasy league. A fantasy league for the first time ever started this year. So everyone is there's like I think 50,000 players now. It's a pretty good amount for its first year. So it's pretty exciting. And all of us are in like a private league.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. What is it? Just like selecting individual racers or like corporations, and then like whoever does the best in a given week or month or whatever gets the win.
Yeah, it's pretty much like that.
Okay, so just like standard fantasy stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And like, has that helped your investment in the sport at all?
It just like came into effect this past race, so
Oh,
I don't
okay,
really know yet.
gotcha. Okay, well, I'm definitely have to get involved in the sport then, because that's a really cool thing. I'd love to see what that's like also. And yeah, so I was gonna ask about this after we finished, but I guess I'll just ask now because I suppose some of the viewers would like to hear as well if they well not viewers listeners. Hopefully you're not viewing to this. I know I put it on YouTube, but it's a static image throughout. So if you're viewing, you're gonna be pretty bored at this point. But yeah, like I'm sure you want to hear as well, where you can find F1 because it's not exactly the easiest thing to find, especially in legal routes. Because it's fine to pirate, but like it's also not cool. So like, where do you really find F1?
Um, it really depends on like it's weird because they go to different countries
Yeah.
like for every single race. So a lot of times they're just at awful times. Like um, last week was or 2 weeks ago was China,
Oh,
and it was
jeez.
just like impossible to watch the race because it was in like 1 in the morning, and you could record it, but obviously it's not the same. Um, the races usually air on ESPN2. Free practices you usually have to like watch online, and qualifying is on ESPN2. I think usually.
Okay, I'll definitely have to check that out then. And so I guess that means that you still have cable.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something that I've been working through lately since I actually just got a free trial on YouTube TV the other day, and that's been something really interesting to try out because obviously it's cheaper than cable. And like it has this whole unlimited DVR thing, and it's been really interesting to see just how differently they handle stuff like DVR, where like you just DVR to a whole show and they'll just record every single one, and you can't delete like an individual iteration of the show. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
you either have all of the show or like you have none of it, and that's been super interesting to see. And also just like having like a cloud based cable thing is really cool. Like just being able to record something on my phone and then like go on my computer and watch it, or like I don't know, just yeah, being like just the other day actually, I rushed out of a refereeing game that I was doing because I was super curious to see if LeBron won a game or not. And that was really cool to just be sitting in my car and just checking out a game on my phone and be like, yeah, you got it. I don't know,
Yeah, it's
whatever.
pretty cool.
Yeah, so like, that's been a really interesting thing to see, and I'm curious to see where the future of TV goes from there because it seems like right now everyone's cord cutting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that TV will survive to the next like 20 years or so just because it has a ton of money in it still?
I don't think to the extent. Well, it'll survive definitely, but I think there will be like less channels. There's definitely like the dozens of movie dedicated channels will either turn to something else or they'll drop, just because there's no reason to pay for a subscription to one of those when you could pay whatever it is, like $10 a month for Netflix, and watch the hundreds of movies and TV shows they have.
Okay.
So I think some channels will drop. I don't think all of them will, of course, in such a short amount of time. But it's gonna slowly go down. But there will be a point. Like, cable will continue, in my opinion, for a long time. There's going to be some necessity for it.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely understand that as well. Whenever a commodity has money involved in it, it's very hard to get rid of it, and it's not ultimately something that you need to get rid of. It's just, it's kind of a dinosaur in the industry, and like it's not great for how it drives things, just in terms of the news at the very least. But I don't understand why people watch news in general. Like, it's it's why. Like, it's just to have something on in the background. But you could have my podcast on in the background. So come on, what are you doing? So that's one alternative. Certainly not the best one, but whatever. So what was I gonna say? Yeah, like, so do you watch Netflix and YouTube and whatnot more often than TV?
Um, I would say honestly, all three are probably pretty equal. There are sometimes I don't really put anything on under like my own will for any of those three. In all honesty, I don't like turn on the TV and I like watch a show or something that I recorded or whatever. If like a family member turns on a game or a show, then I'll watch it as I eat or whatever. If my brother's watching a show on Netflix, or if I have friends come over, if I go over to someone's house and they want to watch Netflix, I'm like, sure, the show is probably good or whatever. And with YouTube, I guess I watch YouTube more for education than entertainment usually, but in the sense that it's like a education in a lackadaisical like sense, I guess. It's not like you're definitely going to learn more by reading and by doing than by like watching a video. But if I'm bored and I just say I'm tired and I don't like have the drive to actively search for an interesting article or something that I want to learn or focus on, then I can kind of just put like a YouTube video of something I'm kind of interested in on educationally, and kind of just let it run and maybe half zone out. It's just kind of something to be on, which is a waste of time in some ways, but I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing ultimately. And no, I definitely agree with that. I do the exact same thing. I think that's an awesome term, actually, lackadaisical education. Just, yeah, like you're doing it to learn about something, but it's not necessarily an educational topic. Like, you're not like watching a video on a synopsis for like some classical literature. Maybe you're learning about some subject that you were curious about. Like, you're watching a video on, I don't know, maybe neural networks if you're feeling particularly educational focused, or maybe you're just watching like reviews of like a recent anime, so like what you want to get into watching next time, and like it's always just trying to learn, and I think it's so important over watching something stupid like Dude Perfect. Like, you're not learning by doing that. You're just being entertained, or like watching like sorry, I keep bringing up examples from Mr. D's class. The what's it called? The crap. It's like a compression channel. Like, it's like a giant. It's just a channel that's completely devoted to not smashing things, just like compressing things and like smushing them in between two giant like. All right, Alex is gonna kill me for this.
Hydraulic press.
Yes, the hydraulic press channel. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, like I just don't understand how people waste their time watching that. Like, the same thing's gonna happen every single time, and I get like it can be fun like once or twice, but I don't get people that just like spend 2 hours watching that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the same thing with watching like sports highlights or something. Like, if you want to watch the actual game, just do it. If you want to learn something, well, then YouTube is a fantastic outlet, because there are hundreds of channels that are trying to put out great educational content, and it's really cool to see. Like, do you usually do it by channel, like creators that you trust to put out really good educational videos, or do you just look up like a topic that you're curious on?
Yeah, I pretty much just like look up a topic and I work from there, which is more like it wastes a little bit more time in trying to figure out, hey, this video is good. But obviously, some people are educated in like some things, and even like within a certain topic, like say linear algebra or whatever, some video from one person might be better than a topic or the same topic for another.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it always seems like I'm one of the only people that it does a bit more creator focused, and I think that's just because I like to get entertainment out of my education as I'm doing at the same time. Obviously, everyone wants to be entertained while they're doing something like it, and nobody's like, "Oh, I want to be bored when I'm educated." That really makes it good for me. That's how I've learned. But like in that sense, I am kind of creator driven, and like if I'm watching something like Number File, I'll be like, "Oh, it's Dr. James Grime. I'm super excited to see what he's got to say on graph theory." Or like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, something like maybe I'm watching like game theory or something, and like I want to learn about like some the science in video games. I'm like, oh sweet, MatPat's on now. I can trust I'm getting something really good out of this. I get to laugh at his jokes and learn about something, and like that's a big thing for me. So yeah, in that sense, like I'm not the kind of guy that is just looking things up into the search box, and I think that is interesting because like, I just don't use that often. Usually, I'll just look up a channel that I haven't seen recently, and I'm like, oh, have they put out anything recently? And if I'm looking up something like CGP Grey, I'm like, God, it's been like 4 months. You need to get your bite in gear, man. But yeah, like any other channel, usually I can expect to have something that's gonna pique my interest and is gonna entertain me in some way, as long as inform me, as
Mm-hmm.
well as inform me. So yeah, that's always nice to get out of online streaming platforms. And I don't watch Netflix that much personally, just because I'm not the kind of person that watches TV shows or movies. Like I always joke about this with people, but I've only seen like 15 movies in my life, and like it's also just because it's long form content. But also, I just don't see any advantage to it. If you're watching movies full length, you can just watch a TV show that has more episodes. If you're watching them because they're short, you can watch one TV episode. So
Yeah,
like, I just don't see a good reason for it, honestly.
I get that. The only time I really watch movies is
It's
again if
socially.
someone like puts one on, or if I'm like trying to be hypercritical of it and like analyzing it and saying or like trying to determine whether it's a good movie or not, so I can like discuss it with someone. I don't like watch them purely for the form of like entertainment by myself usually.
Yeah, I can understand that. What do you usually feel like you do the most with your friends when you go out? Obviously, you do everything, but like, what do you think is done the most often?
Um, I honestly I feel like there's a lot of like food. Of course, it's one of the central parts of our culture, I guess. But more than that, we're kind of just like I'll sit in the car with some friends for a really long time, and we'll just talk about whatever. It'll be something stupid, or maybe it'll be something like philosophical or exciting, or just whatever. I'll just talk with them for a while.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, and it is a lot of fun to just sit around with a bunch of friends and talk to them about different things. That's a lot of ways why I started the podcast actually was because I would do that with friends through texting, and then I realized, wait, I hate texting. I basically am trying to turn this into a phone call. Why am I bothering texting? Unfortunately, it took like 3 years to realize that, but like it's just fun to be able to talk with people and like talk for your feelings. You learn about a lot about yourself as well as the other person, and you build relationships with them. And that's ultimately the thing that you're trying to do the most in having a social relationship is give something to them and get something back. And like and just talking is a big thing. And yeah, I definitely agree on the food thing. That is very pervasive, not only in our culture, but just because, yeah, like, yeah, anytime like you're done with whatever you're doing, it's, hey, you want to go grab a bite to eat or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, actually, we didn't get to this in the food discussion. Do you have like any favorite restaurants slash do you like going out to eat at all?
Um, I like going out to like try new things. I don't think I have like any favorite like restaurants in particular. I have like a couple like dishes I've really enjoyed trying, but I'm not a specific patron of like a restaurant unless it's like, for example, Don Pepe is, in my opinion, the best Mexican place, and honestly one of the only good ones around like the whole street area. So I would say that's one of my favorites, just because it's really one of the only good places to get Mexican around here.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you have like a favorite cuisine within that? Not
Um,
like within Dub Pip, but like going out to eat.
yeah, I don't think so. In all honesty, I just like trying different things, and if the flavors work, then I'm all for it.
Okay.
I'm not like a picky eater, I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm much of a picky eater myself either. I just despise onions. Ah, stupid onions. But, they're like little ghosts in your food. It's terrible.
I don't love them. I enjoy them for texture's sake. That's about it.
Oh, texture is my biggest problem with them, my friend.
Really?
Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know what it is with them. It's just, yeah, honestly, I don't know what it is with them. It's just like, almost like they're too smooth, and I don't know, it's weird. Okay, so, okay, I guess we can get a little more philosophical now. This could be interesting. So, what would you say is your biggest pet peeve with people?
My biggest pet peeve with people. Oh goodness. I have no idea. I have pet peeves of like specific things that like, or like in aspects of things. Like I have pet peeves of what people do when I'm driving. I don't have pet peeves of like people's personalities. I think I have pet peeves of like what they do in certain situations. So maybe like driving, for example, I'd say like when people take a really, really long time to stop, or like when they like move up while you're at like when you're at a stoplight and you're already braked, and someone will move up in front of you even though there's only like 3 feet that they can move up.
Oh, that's great.
It's just like little things like that are just kind of, they're annoyances. There's nothing that really like gets me about people. It's just like little things that people do
No,
that I would usually do differently.
I understand that. And I honestly think that was just bad phrasing of the question, because that's really what pet peeves are. It's just like little things. It's not like big personality traits that annoy you. But
Mhm.
yeah, like so you mentioned that driving thing. Are you someone that gets road rage at all, or are you a more mellow driver?
I know. I'm pretty okay when I'm driving. I'm watching out. I'm just getting from point A to point B. Um, I don't really drive erratically ever. I check everything. The only time I drive like out of the normal is when I'm like, sometimes when I'm like completely alone, I'll just drive fast and, or fast, whatever, not necessarily compared to other people, but only on like really twisted roads or whatever, because it feels like racing. Racing is fun. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
about the extent of my dangerous driving.
No, I can understand that. Yeah, pretty much the extent of my dangerous driving is driving 20 in a parking lot or whatever. No, then not really. That's actually dangerous. Don't do that. But no, like it seems like it's a very black and white thing with like if you're gonna be a road rage person or like just mellow behind the wheel. Like it doesn't seem like there's any in between. Like sometimes you get angry at people and like sometimes you don't. It's just you're gonna lose your hat when like someone, I don't know, they are like tailgating, not tailgating you. Well, no, it is that. Yeah, tailgating you, or like I don't know, they beep at you or something. Like you just roll down your window and flip them off or something. But
Yeah,
like it just seems like it never goes both ways, and that's definitely
yeah, because I
interesting to
think
me.
in driving there's just like really big decisions that you have to make when you do things, and you obviously either make the decision or you don't, and the decision that you make makes like you, whether you're like a road rage kind of person or mellow.
Yeah. Okay. So I know for me, like I don't enjoy driving at all. Like it's just something that I'm completely uncomfortable with the entire time. I'm like, oh, am I gonna get hurt or something? Like I'm not a particularly anxious person. It's not like I'm like thinking the entire time, oh, I'm gonna crash, I'm gonna crash, I'm gonna crash. Ah! But like like it's just not a comfortable thing. Like for me at least. How do you feel with that? Like, are you a comfortable driver? Do you like driving?
I've really gone back and forth on that. Right now, I think I'm in a period where I'm just accepting that it needs to be done, and I'm not loving it, but I think I'm taking a little bit advantage of it by like listening to new music or like a new album while I'm driving or something. and I feel like I'm getting something out of it rather than just, oh hey, I quote wasted, not wasted, I'm getting somewhere, but wasted 15 minutes driving to school today.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean there. Like for me, and I forget that not everyone does stuff like this. I'm always listening to like a podcast or something on the way to school, and like
Mm-hmm.
like just the other day when I didn't have a podcast on my phone for whatever reason because I just forgot to download anything. But it was super weird because like I'm used to getting educated when I was when I'm either driving to school or driving to refereeing or whatever, and like it was super weird because I'm like, I'm not learning anything, and obviously I don't have a radio, so I'm like, what am I supposed to do? It was such a strange experience, and yeah, like it's always really interesting to see how the brain associates things with other things, and just the relationships between it and the expectations that get set, and like just when you break them, how just completely uncomfortable you feel.
We're definitely creatures of habit.
Oh, definitely. So, like, do you listen to podcasts at all?
No, I definitely should more. And I mean, I I believe that the best way to learn is um, like by doing. But if there's no other, if you're just like in a car or something, then I don't see a problem with like listening to podcasts to get educated, other than maybe like not focusing on driving, which is the main task. But if if I were to, I can imagine myself like starting to listen to podcasts while I'm driving, but I can't see myself like using it as a primary form of education.
Yeah, I can see that. And at the very least, you have one you can start listening to now. But yeah, it's interesting that more people don't listen to podcasts, to be honest, because it's just an alternative form of media. And I do wonder why it isn't bigger. I think a lot of it has to do with just SEO optimization and well, not SEO optimization, that is the O. But yeah, like just how podcasts are really marketed to the public and how like it's not going to appear on if you look something up on Google, it's really not going to appear through RSS just because
Yeah.
like it's very hard to get that kind of stuff out there. Like you can't cite anything from a podcast. Like it's very hard. It's a very closed environment. Like you're either in it and like you have found a podcast and like you're within it, and like either it gets recommended, like another one gets recommended through the podcast, or you're just not going to hear any other ones, or like it's
Yeah.
on the top 100 on iTunes or whatever, and like everyone's going to flock to it all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very interesting how closed off that environment is, and it seems like podcasts have always been around and never really gotten any more popular. And it's a weird thing in that sense. Okay, so let's see. Okay, this is interesting. I have no clue where you're going to go on this actually. So I'll preface this with, are you're not dating right now, are you?
I am actually.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm glad I asked because the last time I did this, I made a presumption and it totally blew up in my face. So okay, that makes this a more interesting discussion then. So okay, so how's that going for you?
It's going well. So my current girlfriend. Um, this is the second time we've dated. The first time was like last year. We dated for about 3 months, and then something really big like happened in her life, which stressed her out to the point where she made the decision to like break up with me or whatever. And then we kind of just like phased out of each other's lives. And she's a band person. Like everyone I know is from band, pretty much. Band is it's a cult, I swear. um, but anyway, we met back through bands, and we just started talking again. And she's been less stressed out, so we decided to try dating again. And I appreciate her, and she's one of like my favorite people to talk to. One of my best friends is what I think it should be in a relationship.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay, that's a really mature thing, honestly. Because yeah, and I could see easily a scenario where like someone would be super petty about it and be like, "No, you broke up with me. I'm not dating you again," or whatever. And like that's just getting your emotions in the way of things. And yeah, that's a really cool thing that like that kind of thing can come back again. Because like you always hear about people being like, "Oh, if you get divorced, you're gonna want to get back together with them. Don't do it." But like, yeah, like there's not much of a good reason not to, frankly, especially now when like there's absolutely no
Mhm.
committals. Like,
Yeah.
what's the worst that happens? Like you waste 3 months of your life. So like, what's one of the biggest things that you feel like you get out of your dating life?
I feel like I get like a lot of support. She's just like an extra best friend to me that I know will always like listen to me regardless, and it's always gonna like care. It's just another person that just because I think we'd be friends regardless of whether we were dating or not. But just the fact that like we say we're together, it kind of just like pushes it forward, and it's more of like it's not an obligation. You still want to listen to each other, but you know like no matter what that they're gonna be there for you. It's not gonna be like, oh hey, oh no, I just have this other obligation like with a friend, and like they're infinitely more important than you. Like if they need help, then you're gonna be there for them, and they're gonna be there for you no matter what.
Okay, that's a really cool thing, honestly. What's the biggest thing that surprised you about Well, here I should probably ask this first. So, like, how long have you been dating? Like, not just her, but I mean, like, when did you first get into the scene?
Um, Actually dating, this is like she was my first like real relationship where we like went on dates and like went on to each other's like we went to each other's houses or whatever. I've had like girlfriends since like eighth grade or whatever, but I wouldn't like call them real relationships or whatever
Okay, so like,
because we just didn't hang out.
no, I can understand that. It's just like almost like a fling at that point.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the biggest thing that like when if you even had assumptions about what it would be like, what's the biggest thing that like differs from what actually dating like in a real relationship has been like and what you expected it would be like?
Um, I don't think I really went into like dating with a lot of like expectations. I don't think. I think a lot of people like expect to go in and like say, "Oh, I have to date to marry or whatever, or I have to date just so like I can have fun in high school or whatever." But like I kind of um, for this relationship, I kind of just went into it open minded, and it's developed into something like I really love, and I really care about the relationship now. And because I didn't have any expectations, it blossomed into like what it was supposed to be rather than something that I had said that I wanted it to be for.
Okay, that's a really mature perspective as well, and yeah, it's always really important to come in things with an open mind because either you're gonna get either you're gonna have way too low of perspectives and that's gonna influence how you act initially, or you're gonna have way too high of expectations and you're never gonna be satisfied. So yeah, I can definitely see the benefits there. Uh, where did I want to pivot that to? Crap. Hmm. Well, that's not very good. I completely lost my train of thought. Here, I guess I'll throw this to you then. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, you program, right?
Yeah, somewhat.
Somewhat. How long have you been doing that?
So I've been programming for since really the start of high school. I have no clue why, but I just took a C++ class with Mr. D, obviously, and I've
Mhm.
taken a programming class ever since.
Yeah. So I just started like very very recently, like within the last week.
Oh wow.
I started going onto like this course on edX. It's pretty much like a Microsoft like it's supposed to be like a 250-hour course, but my goal is to finish it like before I go to college, which is supposedly like 2 hours a day, which I don't think will be like too much of a commitment during the summer. So I'm hoping I can get it done. But anyway, I'm hoping to learn pretty much the basics of programming and learn Python and JavaScript by then. So I was just like kind of wondering like your experiences with it and what you've done with it so far and how much time you put into it.
Yeah, okay. So I think there really are two different type of coders that you'll see. There are the people that code in their free time and that like try and apply coding to everything, and then there's the more utilitarian people where Like if they have to apply code to something, like another solution isn't going to work, they're going to try and create code for it. So like the kind of people like I'm talking about who are just doing it all the time, they'll be making like their own software, they'll be making like games for themselves just because they have fun with it and like they want to push their limits. And the other people like they do it as either a job or like not a hobby because that would be the other one. Like it's they're more trying to apply it within the working life. And like one of the early decisions you have to make is like which kind of person do you want to be, and like because if you want to be the kind of person that's doing it in their free time, it takes a whole lot more commitment, and it's a lot more just experimenting with yourself and seeing like how you want to code. And like one of the most important decisions you can make early on is choosing your language, because obviously every language is different, and like some are easier for beginners than others. And it's really important to like know what you're trying to get out of the code. Like if you want to get super into math or something, you want to be choosing a different language than if you're trying to get really into language for designing video games or something. So like you just have to be aware of things going in. One of the biggest things that I think people miss when like they start out coding, like their expectations is debugging. Like can be a real hassle, and like that's always the thing that I've hated about coding myself is just having to fix errors in code, because like I can just get grating at certain points. It's like, why won't you work, computer? But like just like you run your code and you're like 500 errors. Are you kidding me? There's like 30 lines in this code. But but no, like overall, it's a really cool thing when it works. That I like to see. Okay, just based on stuff that I've only done and like that I've typed into the computer, I've just created this thing on the screen and it just performed this task that I could have never done myself, and it just did it in a couple seconds, and it was all because of me. And like that's a really self-fulfilling thing, so like it really empowers you. And yeah, if you want to get into coding, I would definitely strongly recommend it because it's so important in the workplace today. Like if you can tell somebody that you know how to code in Python, or like you can, I don't know, like you can do database management within SQL or something. That's an amazing resume boost. It's like back 20 years ago, if you said you could do Excel, like it's the same kind of thing, and like it just makes all the difference in the world and the workforce, and even just in what you feel capable of.
Mm. So, what would you like recommend to someone starting out in like any language, just like as a general, like when you're starting to program, what like mindset would you recommend someone having?
Yeah, mindset. Well, what are you trying to get out of coding?
So for me, I'm pretty much looking at it as I've always kind of wanted to do it. I've never really had time to do it. I'm really interested in like the idea of creating things. I've always been into like I did Minecraft, I did Legos, all that good stuff. Um, so for me, I'm interested in creating things, and I also see the like impact that it will have. Me being like wanting to be an engineer later in my life, I see how important it will be to have knowledge in programming and how beneficial that'll be for me.
Okay, so hmm. So I guess yeah, I would really recommend you get proficient in like two languages, because I think that's a lot of problem that a lot of people run into when they start coding, is they get really good at like one language, but then they get locked into that language and they don't want to move on. And one of the biggest things in actually coding in the workforce is you have to be able to move in between languages all the time. And like the biggest thing is understanding general concepts, not like the specific things. So like you might come into a workforce and like you're super proficient in, let's say, Python, C++, and Java and JavaScript, and this company only does C sharp for all their database management, and they want you to get proficient in that in a couple weeks and like get up to speed. So like it's all about just understanding how coding works and like understanding how programming languages work in general, not just how do you print something to the screen in X language, and like just I think you get what I'm saying. Like wait, like you have to understand how coding works, not how a given language works. But if you want suggestions on like languages you should be looking at, I would highly recommend getting proficient in LaTeX, because that's essentially the language of math and engineering and programming. And then I would also recommend either JavaScript or C++ from there. You can do Python is just as good. It just comes down to how much you actually want to be creating your own things from there. Because I got the sense that like you'd be the kind of person that would be into like making a game or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So and then expectations. It takes time to get good.
Yeah.
You have to actually like I'm trying to think of an expression here. You have to appreciate the little things that you can do, like
Mm-hmm.
making a game where like you type things into the screen and like there's no graphics or anything, but the computer is responding to what you're doing. That's
Mm-hmm.
a win right there. Like you don't have to. Here, Rome wasn't created in a day. Let's say, like it's just something where you have to accept the fact that like you're learning it in the same way that like you would take a foreign language. You're learning something entirely new, and you're learning how to communicate it and get that computer to. You're learning to leverage that computer to actually do what you want out of it, and it's something that you just have to accept takes time and just be proud of what you can accomplish right now and be proud when you can do incredible things like actually understand how recursion works or you can create I don't know like create a stack or a queue like even that small thing is really cool after a little while of coding and I'm sure like the first time you create a GUI it's going to be one of the coolest things that you see and yeah just really appreciate what you'll be able to do and know that regardless of how much experience you end up mustering, any experience is super important to the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
All
Cool.
right, so
Yeah.
I think we dived far enough away from that train wreck that I ran into like 10 minutes ago. So I guess I could just start up on something new here. Okay, so I've got like two bullet points here left, and then I guess we'll call it after that. Okay. So within educational topics, do you have specific subjects that you most like reading and learning about?
I'm really interested in like anything logical. Pretty much like if there's a new math topic, even if it's like over my head, I just kind of like hearing about it and like being informed and maybe being able to like make like a few connections in a super like complex topic that I might not be able to fully understand yet is really like exciting for me. And maybe there is like a simpler like logic puzzle or something there is that I can learn how to do. It's just kind of fun to test like my mental capabilities and see where I am like on the spectrum at any given time.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It's super cool watching those math videos that are you're just hopelessly under undereducated on it. Just like watching something like on a Riemann zeta function, and you're like, what is even going on here? Or like you're watching like a topology video where it's like, oh, okay, let's turn a sphere inside out or something, and like you don't even know what's going on. And like it's a really cool thing to just feel humbled by like all that's
Mm-hmm.
out there, and that's a really important thing. I feel like anybody, if they want to properly mature, they need to be humbled at some point. Because if you're just feeling like, hey, I'm the bee's knees and like I'm getting everything done and like I'm the best at everything that I do, you're not going to become a good person. You're going to either become an egotist or you're not going to be someone that challenges yourself. And you really need to be someone that's the opposite of those two things if you want to be a successful person.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're just relying on whatever you happen to be born with, which some people do, but like you don't want to be that guy. So that's that. But I also love reading about logical things. I'm a huge logician. I love talking about the logic behind situations, and if not taking emotion out of things, just looking at it outside of that. And like, I love personally ranking things. So like, I'm a big top 10 guy, and just thinking about criteria and being. And like I'm not like someone that watches Watch Mojo all the time, but that's an example I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. Or even just looking up like, ooh, what's the top 10 SpongeBob episodes? And like just reading like why they went through and like the methodology that they went through and like other things. Like I'm really into like a Nerf channel on YouTube, not because I like Nerf at all. I've owned like two Nerf guns in my entire life, and like I haven't fired either of them in like the past 5 years. but I really enjoy the channel because like the methodology that the guy goes through to like test things and like all the science that he uses and like just the way that he formulates it and like he talks about the different blasters and like just how he factors in the cost of them to his analysis, and it's just a really cool thing to see, and like it
Mm.
gets into like what I enjoy, which is like systems analysis, and I almost wonder in that sense if that should be my job later on. But yeah, like just looking at the logic is fascinating to me, and actually, it's biology has been really interesting just in terms of how much Mrs. Johnson's been bringing logic into it more and more.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the further you get into like any scientific field, the more it's gonna get into that, and the more you're gonna like understand the reasoning behind anything. Because yeah, freshman year there were a lot of questions and or a ton of questions, and of course even this year there's still like a lot of purveying questions. You're like, wait, why exactly is this happening? Like maybe chemically or why exactly? And of course, if you went in to study that in college, you'd eventually find out. And there's just those questions, and the further you get in, the more you'll be able to explain to yourself and everyone else.
Yeah, and the more you'll realize that the questions never end. It just goes from having being able to ask someone the question to getting the response, "Hey, if only anyone knew." And
Mm-hmm.
like that has to be the most driving force there is for scientists. Just asking a professor a question and then them saying that nobody knows. Like
Yeah.
that's a really strong thing. I have to imagine that's why a lot of people do get into research. And yeah, like that class has been so much fun this year because we've dived further and further into topics that like I didn't even know to think about. Like so, like
Mm.
that stuff we did with chapter 5. That was like the really crazy one that like we had never learned anything on before. I'd never even thought to think about that kind of stuff in freshman year, and learning about like the proton pump and like all of these different mechanisms that like, we didn't even think were factors in biological system, and it just makes me think about geez, how much more stuff could we have done in like another semester of this class, and like
Yeah.
how much is left in this body that we still don't understand? My God. So yeah, that's been a major factor in why biology's been one of my favorite classes this year. I think it's been one of almost everyone's favorite classes,
Yeah,
just
I think so.
because Mrs. Johnson's such a fun teacher, and the subject is fun. Like biology is a hard sport, not sport, but oh, that's why. Because I was looking at my outline, and I saw E League, not sport. It's a really fun subject to learn, and like, yeah, at some points, it's a lot of memorization. Like you got to learn your Krebs cycle. If you're taking field bio, you got to learn a bunch of different species, but a lot of it is just understanding the system behind things, understanding evolution, and like, wow, there's a bunch of natural mechanisms that are causing it, and like just
Mm.
if you look at it like a computer at some points, it's really cool to see like, okay, this was going to be the end state no matter what the inputs were, and
Yeah.
like every time, like it's going to result in like every time life is going to go from like a cyanobacteria, and like obviously you got your lightning and your volcanic eruptions producing those, and it's going to end in a super powerful species like humans that are eventually going to exhaust themselves, and it's just going to repeat over and over again. And like it's just a really cool thing, and like obviously everyone is obsessed with life and understanding it because well we're a part of that system. Who wouldn't want to understand the world around them? But yeah, like it's just been a really fun class.
I completely agree.
Are you taking a college comp?
I am, yes.
Okay, yeah, then it's been almost the same thing for me because I know a lot of people complain mainly, Yash, just about like oh writing every day and like oh that sucks, but that's been huge for me this year, and it's been like in all my English classes in previous years, I always dreaded getting written assignments because like I'm not a big fan of writing for people, but just her getting me to write like every night or every other night, it's been really powerful. And, like it's gotten me to like accept the fact that like you got to write and like I've seen personally my writing dramatically improve from a point where I didn't know that dead words were a thing at the beginning of the year, and like using and button or as my only transitions to like always sprinkling new sentence structures in, throwing semicolons in where I can, using all the moreovers and consequently, and
Mm-hmm.
just it's been so cool to see the development.
Yeah, it's fun. Anything, you just got to practice it, and I've definitely seen that with my writing this year as well.
Yeah, what was the biggest thing that changed for you?
I think I've definitely been able to be more concise in getting like my points across. I would in past years dance around what I was trying to get to and never really like be able to communicate what I really wanted to get. But I think now I'm really getting closer to representing the ideas I want to communicate with my writing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's such an important thing to be able to express yourself both verbally and both written and sorry, both verbally and also writtenly. Or that didn't make sense. You get the idea. Like it's just important because like sometimes you're not gonna be able to talk to people, so you have to send them an email or whatnot. I think it'd be really cool if we could just have a class that's like just writing emails for dummies. It's like there's so many things that we don't learn in schools. Like
Yeah,
I always joke about this with teachers, but like if they just made a class that was literally learning how to Google things, I think that'd be one of the most useful classes you could ever learn.
yeah, probably. I would agree with that. There's a number of people who just cannot find things just because they're not looking the right way, whether it be Google or really any other search engine, or like they're looking for articles or they're looking for information that they want, and it's just because no one's ever taught them or they've never really experimented with different ways, and they just kind of think that their way is the only way.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And at some point, you're just conditioned to think that yeah, your way is the only way, and like that there isn't anything better out there, and you don't challenge yourself. And I mean, yeah, that's really how it ends, and that's how this ends as well. So, thank you guys for listening to the podcast today. I had a lot of fun talking to Alex. I think we got into a ton of different things, and that's really what I was hoping for. We went from music to food to, well, whatever this back half has been, I guess sports, and a bit more educational. And yeah, I hope you learned a little in the process. So, if you enjoyed listening to the podcast, make sure to hit us up on iTunes. Go to Topical, Rationalizing the Monkey Brain. Give us a 5-star review. Please, that'd be great. Don't buy into that thing where you gotta actually pick a star. Don't give 4 stars. You gotta either give it a 1 star or a 5 star, but hopefully a 5. And give us a written review. Why not? Some people like to read those, so you can be the guy that informs someone's opinion on if they should listen to the podcast or not. Also, check us out on YouTube at Topical Rationalizing the Monkey Brain, same name across all the platforms. Give us a subscribe on there. Make sure to hit the bell. I don't know why anyone doesn't just hit the bell every time they subscribe. Do you not want to actually find out about being subscribed? You're just trying to knock up the ticker. That doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, give us a comment on there. Who knows? Maybe we'll do like an all comments episode where I just read off all the questions and I answer them with somebody. That could be a lot of fun. And yeah, we're gonna see you guys next time because you know we're not stopping anytime soon.